The Pilgrim's Progress. In the Similitude of a Dream. Author, John Bunyan. I have used similitudes. Hosea chapter 12, verse 10. Chapter 1. The Jail. As I walked through the wilderness of this world, I lighted on a certain place, where was a den, and I laid me down in that place to sleep, and as I slept, I dreamed a dream. I dreamed, and, behold, I saw a man clothed with rags, standing in a certain place, with his face from his own house, a book in his hand, and a great burden upon his back. I looked, and saw him open the book, and read therein, and as he read, he wept and trembled, and not being able longer to contain, he brake out with a lamentable cry, saying, What shall I do? In this plight, therefore, he went home, and refrained himself as long as he could, that his wife and children should not perceive his distress, but he could not be silent long, because that his trouble increased. Wherefore at length he brake his mind to his wife and children, and thus he began to talk to them. O my dear wife, said he, and you, the children of my bowels, I, your dear friend, am in myself undone, by reason of a burden that lieth hard upon me. Moreover, I am for certain informed that this our city will be burned with fire from heaven, in which fearful overthrow, both myself, with thee, my wife, and you, my sweet babes, shall miserably come to ruin, except, the which yet I see not, some way of escape can be found, whereby we may be delivered. At this, his relations were sore amazed, not for that they believed that what he had said to them was true, but because they thought that some frenzied distemper had got into his head, therefore, it drawing towards night, and they hoping that sleep might settle his brains, with all haste they got him to bed. But the night was as troublesome to him as the day, wherefore, instead of sleeping, he spent it in sighs and tears. So when the morning was come, they would know how he did. He told them, worse and worse. He also set to talking to them again, but they began to be hardened. They also thought to drive away his distemper by harsh and surly carriages to him. Sometimes they would deride, sometimes they would chide, and sometimes they would quite neglect him. Wherefore he began to retire himself to his chamber to pray for, and pity them, and also to condole his own misery. He would also walk solitarily in the fields, sometimes reading, and sometimes praying, and thus for some days he spent his time. Now I saw upon a time, when he was walking in the fields, that he was, as he was wont, reading in his book, and greatly distressed in his mind, and as he read, he burst out, as he had done before, crying, What shall I do to be saved? I saw also that he looked this way and that way, as if he would run, yet he stood still, because, as I perceived, he could not tell which way to go. I looked then, and saw a man named Evangelist coming to him, who asked, Wherefore dost thou cry? He answered, Sir, I perceive, by the book in my hand, that I am condemned to die, and after that to come to judgment, and I find that I am not willing to do the first, nor able to do the second. Then said Evangelist, Why not willing to die, since this life is attended with so many evils? The man answered, Because I fear that this burden that is upon my back will sink me lower than the grave, and I shall fall into Tophet. And, sir, if I be not fit to go to prison, I am not fit, I am sure, to go to judgment, and from thence to execution, and the thoughts of these things make me cry. Chapter 2. Conviction of the necessity of flying. Then said Evangelist, If this be thy condition, why standest thou still? He answered, Because I know not whither to go. Then he gave him a parchment roll, and there was written within, Fly from the wrath to come. The man therefore, read it, and looking upon Evangelist very carefully, said, Whither must I fly? Then said Evangelist, pointing with his finger over a very wide field, Do you see yonder wicket gate? The man said, No. Then said the other, Do you see yonder shining light? He said, I think I do. Then said Evangelist, Keep that light in your eye, and go up directly thereto, so shalt thou see the gate, at which, when thou knockest, it shall be told thee what thou shalt do. So I saw in my dream that the man began to run. Now, he had not ran far from his own door, but his wife and children perceiving it, began to cry after him to return, but the man put his fingers in his ears, and ran on, crying, Life! Life. Eternal life. So he looked not behind him, but fled towards the middle of the plain. The neighbors also came out to see him run, and as he ran, some mocked, others threatened, and some cried after him to return, and among those that did so, there were 2 that were resolved to fetch him back by force. The name of the one was Obstinate, and the name of the other, Pliable. Now by this time, the man was got a good distance from them, but, however, they were resolved to pursue him, which they did, and in a little time they overtook him. Then said the man, Neighbors, wherefore are ye come? They said, To persuade you to go back with us. But he said, That can by no means be. You dwell, said he, in the city of destruction, the place also where I was born, I see it to be so, and dying there, sooner or later, you will sink lower than the grave, into a place that burns with fire and brimstone. Be content, good neighbors, and go along with me. What, said Obstinate, and leave our friends and our comforts behind us? Yes, said Christian, for that was his name, because that all, which you shall forsake, is not worthy to be compared with a little of that which I am seeking to enjoy, and if you will go along with me, and hold it, you shall fare as I myself, for there, where I go, is enough and to spare. Come away, and prove my words. Obstinate, what are the things you seek, since you leave all the world to find them? Christian, I seek an inheritance incorruptible, undefiled, and that fadeth not away, and it is laid up in heaven, and safe there, to be bestowed, at the time appointed, on them that diligently seek it. Read it so, if you will, in my book. Obstinate, tush, said Obstinate, away with your book, will you go back with us, or no? Christian, no, not I, saith the other, because I have laid my hand to the plough. Obstinate, come, then, neighbor Pliable, let us turn again, and go home without him. There is a company of these crazed-headed coxcombs, that when they take a fancy by the end, are wiser in their own eyes than 7 men that can render a reason. Pliable, then said Pliable, do not revile, if what the good Christian says is true, the things he looks after are better than ours, my heart inclines to go with my neighbor. Obstinate, what? More fools still. Be ruled by me, and go back, who knows whither such a brain-sick fellow will lead you? Go back, and be wise. Christian, nay, but do thou come with thy neighbor Pliable, there are such things to be had which I spoke of, and many more glories besides, if you believe not me, read here in this book, and for the truth of what is expressed therein, behold, all is confirmed by the blood of him that made it. Pliable, well, neighbor Obstinate, saith Pliable, I begin to come to a point, I intend to go along with this good man, and to cast in my lot with him. But, my good companion, do you know the way to this desired place? Christian, I am directed by a man whose name is Evangelist, to speed me to a little gate that is before us, where we shall receive instructions about the way. Pliable, come then, good neighbor, let us be going. Then they went both together. Obstinate, and I will go back to my place, said Obstinate, I will be no companion of such misled fantastical fellows. Chapter 3. The Slough of Despond. Now I saw in my dream, that when Obstinate was gone back, Christian and Pliable went talking over the plain, and thus they began their discourse. Christian. Come, neighbor Pliable, how do you do? I am glad you are persuaded to go along with me. Had even Obstinate himself but felt what I have felt, of the powers and terrors of what is yet unseen, he would not thus lightly have given us the back. Pliable. Come, neighbor Christian, since there is none but us 2 here, tell me now further, what the things are, and how to be enjoyed, whither we are going. Christian. I can better conceive of them with my mind, than speak of them with my tongue, but yet since you are desirous to know, I will read of them in my book. Pliable. And do you think that the words of your book are certainly true? Christian. Yes, verily, for it was made by him that cannot lie. Pliable. Well said. What things are they? Christian. There is an endless kingdom to be inhabited, and everlasting life to be given us, that we may inhabit that kingdom forever. Pliable. Well said. And what else? Christian. There are crowns of glory to be given us, and garments that will make us shine like the sun in the firmament of heaven. Pliable. This is very pleasant. And what else? Christian. There shall be no more crying, nor sorrow, for he that is owner of the place will wipe all tears from our eyes. Pliable. And what company shall we have there? Christian. There we shall be with seraphims, and cherubims, creatures that will dazzle your eyes to look on them. There, also, ye shall meet with thousands and 10,000 that have gone before us to that place. None of them are hurtful, but loving and holy, everyone walking in the sight of God, and standing in his presence with acceptance forever. In a word, there we shall see the elders with their golden crowns, there we shall see the holy virgins with their golden harps, there we shall see men, that by the world were cut in pieces, burnt in flames, eaten of beasts, drowned in the seas, for the love that they bear to the Lord of the place, all well, and clothed with immortality as with a garment. Pliable. The hearing of this is enough to ravish one's heart, but are these things to be enjoyed? How shall we get to be sharers thereof? Christian. The Lord, the governor of the country, hath recorded, that in this book, the substance of which is, if we be truly willing to have it, he will bestow it upon us freely. Pliable. Well, my good companion, glad am I to hear of these things. Come on, let us mend our pace. Christian. I cannot go so fast as I would, by reason of this burden that is on my back. Now I saw in my dream, that, just as they had ended this talk, they drew near to a very miry slough that was in the midst of the plain, and they, being heedless, did both fall suddenly into the bog. The name of the slough was Despond. Here, therefore, they wallowed for a time, being grievously bedaubed with the dirt, and Christian, because of the burden that was on his back, began to sink in the mire. Pliable. Then said Pliable, Ah! Neighbor Christian, where are you now? Christian. Truly, said Christian, I do not know. Pliable. At that Pliable began to be offended, and angrily said to his fellow, Is this the happiness you have told me all this while of? If we have such ill speed at our first setting out, what may we expect betwixt this and our journey's end? May I get out again with my life, ye shall possess the brave country alone for me. And with that he gave a desperate struggle or two, and got out of the mire on that side of the slough which was next to his own house, so away he went, and Christian saw him no more. Wherefore Christian was left to tumble in the slough of Despond alone, but still he endeavoured to struggle to that side of the slough that was still further from his own house, and next to the wicket gate, the which he did, but could not get out, because of the burden that was upon his back. But I beheld in my dream, that a man came to him, whose name was Help, and asked him what he did there. Christian. Sir, said Christian, I was bid go this way by a man called Evangelist, who directed me also to yonder gate, that I might escape the wrath to come. And as I was going thither, I fell in here. Help. But why did not you look for the steps? Christian. Fear followed me so hard, that I fled the next way, and fell in. Help. Then said he, Give me thy hand, so he gave him his hand, and he drew him out, and set him upon sound ground, and bid him go on his way. Then I stepped to him that plucked him out, and said, Sir, wherefore, since over this place is the way from the city of destruction, to yonder gate, is it that this plat is not mended, that poor travellers might go thither with more security? And he said unto me, This miry slough is such a place as cannot be mended. It is the descent whither the scum and filth that attends conviction for sin, doth continually run, and therefore it is called the slough of Despond, for still, as the sinner is awakened about his lost condition, there ariseth in his soul many fears, and doubts, and discouraging apprehensions, which all of them get together, and settle in this place. And this is the reason of the badness of this ground. It is not the pleasure of the king that this place should remain so bad, his labourers, also, have, by the directions of his Majesty's surveyors, been, for above these years, employed about this patch of ground, if, perhaps, it might have been mended, yea, and to my knowledge, said he, here have been swallowed up at least, cartloads, yea, mill-lions of wholesome instructions, that have, at all seasons, been brought from all places of the king's dominions, and they that can tell, say, they are the best materials to make good ground of the place, if so be it might have been mended. But it is the slough of despond still, and so will be when they have done what they can. True, there are, by the direction of the lawgiver, certain good and substantial steps, placed even through the very midst of this slough, but at such time as this place doth much spew out its filth, as it doth against change of weather, these steps are hardly seen, or if they be, men, through the dizziness of their heads, step besides, and then they are bemired to purpose, notwithstanding the steps be there, but the ground is good, when they are once got in at the gate. Now I saw in my dream, that, by this time, Pliable was got home to his house again, so that his neighbors came to visit him, and some of them called him wise man for coming back, and some called him fool for hazarding himself with Christian, others, again, did mock at his cowardliness, saying, Surely, since you began to venture, I would not have been so base to have given out for a few difficulties. So Pliable sat sneaking among them. But, at last, he got more confidence, and then they all turned their tails, and began to deride poor Christian behind his back. And thus much concerning Pliable. Now as Christian was walking solitarily by himself, he espied one afar off come crossing over the field to meet him, and their hap was to meet just as they were crossing the way of each other. The gentleman's name that met him was Mr. Worldly Wiseman. He dwelt in the town of Carnal Policy, a very great town, and also hard by from whence Christian came. This man, then, meeting with Christian, and having some inkling of him, for Christian's setting forth from the city of destruction was much noised abroad, not only in the town where he dwelt, but, also, it began to be the town talk in some other places. Master Worldly Wiseman, therefore, having some guess of him, by beholding his laborious going, by observing his sighs and groans, and the like, began thus to enter into some talk with Christian. World. How now, good fellow, whither away after this burdened manner? Christian. A burdened manner, indeed, as ever, I think, poor creature had. And whereas you ask me, whither away? I tell you, sir, I am going to yonder wicket gate before me, for there, as I am informed, I shall be put into a way to be rid of my heavy burden. World. Hast thou a wife and children? Christian. Yes, but I am so laden with this burden, that I cannot take that pleasure in them as formerly, methinks I am as if I had none. World. Wilt thou hearken unto me if I give thee counsel? Christian. If it be good, I will, for I stand in need of good counsel. World. I would advise thee, then, that thou with all speed get thyself rid of thy burden, for thou wilt never be settled in thy mind till then, nor canst thou enjoy the benefits of the blessing which God hath bestowed upon thee till then. Christian. That is that which I seek for, even to be rid of this heavy burden, but get it off myself, I cannot, nor is there any man in our country that can take it off my shoulders, therefore am I going this way, as I told you, that I may be rid of my burden. World. Who bid you go this way to be rid of thy burden? Christian. A man that appeared to me to be a very great and honorable person, his name, as I remember, is Evangelist. World. I beshrew him for his counsel. There is not a more dangerous and troublesome way in the world than is that unto which he hath directed thee, and that thou shalt find, if thou wilt be ruled by his counsel. Thou hast met with something, as I perceive already, for I see the dirt of the slough of despond is upon thee, but that slough is the beginning of the sorrows that do attend those that go on in that way. Hear me, I am older than thou art like to meet with, on the way which thou goest, wearisomeness, painfulness, hunger, perils, nakedness, sword, lions, dragons, darkness, and, in a word, death, and what not. These things are certainly true, having been confirmed by many testimonies. And why should a man so carelessly cast away himself, by giving heed to a stranger? Christian. Why, sir, this burden upon my back is more terrible to me than are all these things which you have mentioned, nay, methinks I care not what I meet with in the way, if so be I can also meet with deliverance from my burden. World. How camest thou by the burden at first? Christian. By reading this book in my hand. World. I thought so, and it has happened unto thee as to other weak men, who, meddling with things too high for them, do suddenly fall into thy distractions, which distractions do not only unman men, as thine, I perceive, has done thee, but they run them upon desperate ventures, to obtain they know not what. Christian. I know what I would obtain, it is ease for my heavy burden. World. But why wilt thou seek for ease this way, seeing so many dangers attend it? Especially since, hadst thou but patience to hear me, I could direct thee to the obtaining of what thou desirest, without the dangers that thou in this way wilt run thyself into, yea, and the remedy is at hand. Besides, I will add, that, instead of those dangers, thou shalt meet with much safety, friendship, and content. Christian. Pray, sir, open this secret to me. World. Why, in yonder village, the village is named Morality, there dwells a gentleman whose name is Legality, a very judicious man, and a man of a very good name, that has skill to help men off with such burdens as thine are from their shoulders, yea, to my knowledge, he hath done a great deal of good this way, aye, and besides, he hath skill to cure those that are somewhat crazed in their wits with their burdens. To him, as I said, thou mayest go, and be helped presently. His house is not quite a mile from this place, and if he should not be at home himself, he hath a pretty young man to his son, whose name is Civility, that can do it, to speak on, as well as the old gentleman himself. There, I say, thou mayest be eased of thy burden, and if thou art not minded to go back to thy former habitation, as, indeed, I would not wish thee, thou mayest send for thy wife and children to thee to this village, where there are houses now stand empty, one of which thou mayest have at reasonable rates. Provision is there also cheap and good, and that which will make thy life the more happy is, to be sure, there thou shalt live by honest neighbors, in credit and good fashion. Now was Christian somewhat at a stand, but presently he concluded, if this be true, which this gentleman hath said, my wisest course is to take his advice, and with that he thus further spoke. Christian. Sir, which is my way to this honest man's house? World. Do you see yonder hill? Christian. Yes, very well. World. By that hill you must go, and the first house you come at is his. So Christian turned out of his way, to go to Mr. Legality's house for help, but, behold, when he was got now hard by the hill, it seemed so high, and also that side of it that was next the wayside, did hang so much over, that Christian was afraid to venture further, lest the hill should fall on his head, wherefore there he stood still, and what not what to do. Also his burden now seemed heavier to him, than while he was in his way. There came also flashes of fire out of the hill, that made Christian afraid that he should be burned. Here, therefore, he sweat and did quake for fear. And now he began to be sorry that he had taken Mr. Worldly Wise Man's counsel. Chapter 4. Evangelist findeth Christian under Mount Sinai, and looketh severely upon him. And with that he saw Evangelist coming to meet him, at the sight also of whom he began to blush for shame. So Evangelist drew nearer and nearer, and coming up to him, he looked upon him with a severe and dreadful countenance, and thus began to reason with Christian. Evangelist. What dost thou here, Christian? Said he, at which words Christian knew not what to answer, wherefore at present he stood speechless before him. Then said Evangelist further, Art not thou the man that I found crying without the walls of the city of destruction? Christian. Yes, dear sir, I am the man. Evangelist. Did not I direct thee the way to the little wicket gate? Christian. Yes, dear sir, said Christian. Evangelist. How is it, then, that thou art so quickly turned aside? For thou art now out of the way. Christian. I met with a gentleman so soon as I had got over the Slough of Despond, who persuaded me that I might, in the village before me, find a man that could take off my burden. Evangelist. What was he? Christian. He looked like a gentleman, and talked much to me, and got me at last to yield, so I came hither, but when I beheld this hill, and how it hangs over the way, I suddenly made a stand, lest it should fall on my head. Evangelist. What said that gentleman to you? Christian. Why, he asked me whither I was going. And I told him. Evangelist. And what said he then? Christian. He asked me if I had a family. And I told him. But, said I am so loaden with the burden that is on my back, that I cannot take pleasure in them as formerly. Evangelist. And what said he then? Christian. He bid me with speed get rid of my burden, and I told him it was ease that I sought. And, said I am therefore going to yonder gate, to receive further direction how I may get to the place of deliverance. So he said that he would show me a better way, and short, not so attended with difficulties as the way, sir, that you set me in, which way, said he, will direct you to a gentleman's house that hath skill to take off these burdens. So I believed him, and turned out of that way into this, if haply I might be soon eased of my burden. But when I came to this place, and beheld things as they are, I stopped for fear, as I said, of danger, but I now know not what to do. Evangelist. Then, said Evangelist, stand still a little, that I may show thee the words of God. So he stood trembling. Then said Evangelist, see that ye refuse not him that speaketh. For if they escaped not who refused him that spake on earth, much more shall not we escape, if we turn away from him that speaketh from heaven. He said, moreover, now the just shall live by faith, but if any man draw back, my soul shall have no pleasure in him. He also did thus apply them, thou art the man that art running into this misery, thou hast begun to reject the counsel of the Most High, and to draw back thy foot from the way of peace, even almost to the hazarding of thy perdition. Then Christian fell down at his foot as dead, crying, Woe is me, for I am undone. At the sight of which, Evangelist caught him by the right hand, saying, All manner of sin and blasphemies shall be forgiven unto men, be not faithless, but believing. Then did Christian again a little revive, and stood up trembling, as at first, before Evangelist. Then Evangelist proceeded, saying, Give more earnest heed to the things that I shall tell thee of. I will now show thee who it was that deluded thee, and who it was also to whom he sent thee. The man that met thee is one worldly wise man, and rightly is he so called, partly, because he savoureth only the doctrine of this world, therefore he always goes to the town of morality to church, and partly because he loveth that doctrine best, for it saveth him best from the cross. And because he is of this carnal temper, therefore he seeketh to prevent my ways, though right. Now there are 3 things in this man's counsel, that thou must utterly abhor. 1. His turning thee out of the way. 2. His laboring to render the cross odious to thee. And, 3. His setting thy feet in that way that leadeth unto the administration of death. First, thou must abhor his turning thee out of the way, yea, and thine own consenting thereto, because this is to reject the counsel of God for the sake of the counsel of a worldly wise man. The Lord says, Strive to enter in at the strait gate, the gate to which I send thee, for strait is the gate which leadeth unto life, and few there be that find it. From this little wicket gate, and from the way thereto, hath this wicked man turned thee, to the bringing of thee almost to destruction. Hate, therefore, his turning thee out of the way, and abhor thyself for hearkening to him. Secondly, thou must abhor his labouring to render the cross odious unto thee, for thou art to prefer it, before the treasures in Egypt. Besides, the King of glory hath told thee, that he that will save his life shall lose it, and, he that comes after him, and hate not his father, and mother, and wife, and children, and brethren, and sisters, yea, and his own life also, he cannot be my disciple. I say, therefore, for man to labour to persuade thee, that shall be thy death, without which, the truth hath said, thou canst not have eternal life. This doctrine thou must abhor. Thirdly, thou must hate his setting of thy feet in the way that leadeth to the ministration of death. And for this thou must consider to whom he sent thee, and also how unable that person was to deliver thee from thy burden. He to whom thou wast sent for ease, being by name Legality, is the son of the bondwoman which now is, and is in bondage with her children, and is, in a mystery, this Mount Sinai, which thou hast feared will fall on thy head. Now, if she, with her children, are in bondage, how canst thou expect by them to be made free? This Legality, therefore, is not able to set thee free from thy burden. No man was as yet ever rid of his burden by him, no, nor ever is like to be. Ye cannot be justified by the works of the law, for by the deeds of the law no man living can be rid of his burden. Therefore, Mr. Worldly Wiseman is an alien, and Mr. Legality is a cheat, and for his son Civility, notwithstanding his simpering looks, he is but a hypocrite and cannot help thee. Believe me, there is nothing in all this noise, that thou hast heard of these sottish men, but a design to beguile thee of thy salvation, by turning thee from the way in which I had set thee. After this, Evangelist called aloud to the heavens for confirmation of what he had said, and with that there came words and fire out of the mountain under which poor Christian stood, that made the hair of his flesh stand up. The words were thus pronounced: As many as are of the works of the law are under the curse, for it is written, Cursed is everyone that continueth not in all things which are written in the book of the law to do them. Now Christian looked for nothing but death, and began to cry out lamentably, even cursing the time in which he met with Mr. Worldly Wiseman, still calling himself 1,000 fools for hearkening to his counsel. He also was greatly ashamed to think that this gentleman's arguments, flowing only from the flesh, should have the prevalency with him as to cause him to forsake the right way. This done, he applied himself again to Evangelist, in words and sense as follows. Christian. Sir, what think you? Is there hope? May I now go back, and go up to the wicket gate? Shall I not be abandoned for this, and sent back from thence ashamed? I am sorry I have hearkened to this man's counsel. But may my sin be forgiven? Evangelist. Then said Evangelist to him, Thy sin is very great, for by it thou hast committed 2 evils, thou hast forsaken the way that is good, to tread in forbidden paths, yet will the man at the gate receive thee, for he has goodwill for men, only, said he, take heed that thou turn not aside again, lest thou perish from the way, when his wrath is kindled but a little. Then did Christian address himself to go back, and Evangelist, after he had kissed him, gave him one smile, and bid him Godspeed. So he went on with haste, neither spake he to any man by the way, nor, if any asked him, would he vouchsafe them an answer. He went like one that was all the while treading on forbidden ground, and could by no means think himself safe, till again he was got into the way which he left, to follow Mr. Worldly Wiseman's counsel. So, in process of time, Christian got up to the gate. Now, over the gate there was written, Knock, and it shall be opened unto you. He knocked, therefore, more than once or twice, saying, May I now enter here? Will he within open to sorry me, though I have been an undeserving rebel? Then shall I not fail to sing his lasting praise on high. At last there came a grave person to the gate, named Goodwill, who asked who was there, and whence he came, and what he would have. Christian. Here is a poor burdened sinner. I come from the city of destruction, but am going to Mount Zion, that I may be delivered from the wrath to come. I would, therefore, sir, since I am informed that by this gate is the way thither, know if you are willing to let me in. Goodwill. I am willing with all my heart, said he, and with that he opened the gate. So when Christian was stepping in, the other gave him a pull. Then said Christian, What means that? The other told him. A little distance from this gate, there is erected a strong castle, of which Beelzebub is the captain. From thence, both he and them that are with him shoot arrows at those that come up to this gate, if haply they may die before they can enter in. Then said Christian, I rejoice and tremble. So when he was got in, the man of the gate asked him who directed him thither. Christian. Evangelist bid me come hither, and knock, as I did, and he said that you, sir, would tell me what I must do. Goodwill. An open door is set before thee, and no man can shut it. Christian. Now I begin to reap the benefits of my hazards. Goodwill. But how is it that you came alone? Christian. Because none of my neighbors saw their danger, as I saw mine. Goodwill. Did any of them know of your coming? Christian. Yes, my wife and children saw me at the first, and called after me to turn again. Also, some of my neighbors stood crying and calling after me to return, but I put my fingers in my ears, and so came on my way. Goodwill. But did none of them follow you, to persuade you to go back? Christian. Yes, both obstinate and pliable, but when they saw that they could not prevail, obstinate went railing back, but pliable came with me a little way. Goodwill. But why did he not come through? Christian. We, indeed, came both together, until we came at the Slough of Despond. into the which we also suddenly fell. And then was my neighbor, Pliable, discouraged, and would not adventure further. Wherefore getting out again on that side next to his own house, he told me I should possess the brave country alone for him, so he went his way, and I came mine, he after obstinate, and I to this gate. Goodwill. Then said Goodwill, alas, poor man! Is the celestial glory of so small esteem with him, that he counteth it not worth running the hazards of a few difficulties to obtain it? Christian. Truly, said Christian, I have said the truth of Pliable, and if I should also say all the truth of myself, it will appear there is no betterment betwixt him and myself. It is true, he went back to his own house, but I also turned aside to go in the way of death, being persuaded thereto by the carnal arguments of one Mr. Worldly Wiseman. Goodwill. Oh! Did he light upon you? What? He would have had you a sought for ease at the hands of Mr. Legality. They are, both of them, a very cheat. But did you take his counsel? Christian. Yes, as far as I durst, I went to find out Mr. Legality, until I thought that the mountain that stands by his house would have fallen upon my head, wherefore, there I was forced to stop. Goodwill. That mountain has been the death of many, and will be the death of many more, it is well you escaped being by it dashed in pieces. Christian. Why, truly, I do not know what had become of me there, had not Evangelist happily met me again, as I was musing in the midst of my dumps, but it was God's mercy that he came to me again, for else I had never come hither. But now I am come, such a one as I am, more fit, indeed, for death, by that mountain, than thus to stand talking with my Lord, but, oh! What a favour is this to me, that yet I am admitted entrance here. Goodwill. We make no objections against any, notwithstanding all that they have done before they come hither. They are, in no wise cast out, and therefore, good Christian, come a little way with me, and I will teach thee about the way thou must go. Look before thee, dost thou see this narrow way? That is the way thou must go, it was cast up by the patriarchs, prophets, Christ, and his apostles, and it is as straight as a rule can make it. This is the way thou must go. Christian. But, said Christian, are there no turnings nor windings, by which a stranger may lose his way? Goodwill. Yes, there are many ways but down upon this, and they are crooked and wide. But thus thou mayest distinguish the right from the wrong, the right only being straight and narrow. Then I saw in my dream, that Christian asked him further if he could not help him off with his burden that was upon his back, for as yet he had not got rid thereof, nor could he by any means get it off without help. He told him, as to thy burden, be content to bear it, until thou comest to the place of deliverance, for there it will fall from thy back of itself. Then Christian began to gird up his loins, and to address himself to his journey. So the other told him, that by that he was gone some distance from the gate, he would come at the house of the interpreter, at whose door he should knock, and he would show him excellent things. Then Christian took his leave of his friend, and he again bid him Godspeed. Then he went on till he came at the house of the interpreter, where he knocked over and over. At last one came to the door, and asked who was there. Christian. Sir, here is a traveller, who was bid by an acquaintance of the good man of this house to call here for my profit, I would therefore speak with the master of the house. So he called for the master of the house, who, after a little time, came to Christian, and asked him what he would have. Christian. Sir, said Christian, I am a man that am come from the city of destruction, and am going to the Mount Zion, and I was told by the man that stands at the gate, at the head of this way, that if I called here, you would show me excellent things, such as would be a help to me in my journey. Interpreter. Then said the interpreter, Come in, I will show thee that which will be profitable to thee. So he commanded his man to light the candle, and bid Christian follow him, so he had him into a private room, and bid his man open a door, the which when he had done, Christian saw the picture of a very grave person hang up against the wall, and this was the fashion of it. It had eyes lifted up to heaven, the best of books in his hand, the law of truth was written upon his lips, the world was behind his back. It stood as if it pleaded with men, and a crown of gold did hang over its head. Christian. Then said Christian, What meaneth this? Interpreter. The man whose picture this is one of 1,000, he can beget children, travail and birth with children, and nurse them himself when they are born. And whereas thou sayest him with his eaves lift up to heaven, the best of books in his hand, and the law of truth writ on his lips, it is to show thee, that his work is to know and unfold dark things to sinners, even as also thou sayest him stand as if he pleaded with men, and whereas thou sayest the world is cast behind him, and that a crown hangs over his head, that is to show thee that slighting and despising the things that are present, for the love that he hath to his master's service, he is sure in the world that comes next to have glory for his reward. Now, said the interpreter, I have showed thee this picture first, because the man whose picture this is the only man whom the Lord of the place whither thou art going, hath authorized to be thy guide in all difficult places thou mayest meet with in the way, wherefore, take good heed to what I have showed thee, and bear well in thy mind what thou hast seen, lest in thy journey thou meet with some that pretend to lead thee right, but their way goes down to death. Then he took him by the hand, and led him into a very large parlour that was full of dust, because never swept, the which, after he had reviewed a little while, the interpreter called for a man to sweep. Now, when he began to sweep, the dust began so abundantly to fly about, that Christian had almost therewith been choked. Then said the interpreter to a damsel that stood by, Bring hither the water, and sprinkle the room, the which, when she had done, it was swept and cleansed with pleasure. Christian. Then said Christian, What means this? Interpreter. The interpreter answered, This parlour is the heart of a man that was never sanctified by the sweet grace of the gospel, the dust is his original sin and inward corruptions, that have defiled the whole man. He that began to sweep at first, is the law, but she that brought water, and did sprinkle it, is the gospel. Now, whereas thou sawest, that so soon as the first began to sweep, the dust did so fly about that the room by him could not be cleansed, but that thou wast almost choked therewith, this is to show thee, that the law, instead of cleansing the heart, by its working, from sin, doth revive, put strength into, and increase it in the soul, even as it doth discover and forbid it, for it doth not give power to subdue. Again, as thou sawest the damsel sprinkle the room with water, upon which it was cleansed with pleasure, this is to show thee, that when the gospel comes in the sweet and precious influences thereof to the heart, then, I say, even as thou sawest the damsel lay the dust by sprinkling the floor with water, so is sin vanquished and subdued, and the soul made clean, through the faith of it, and consequently fit for the King of glory to inhabit. I saw, moreover, in my dream, that the interpreter took him by the hand, and had him into a little room, where sat 2 little children, each one in his chair. The name of the elder was Passion, and the name of the other Patience. Passion seemed to be much discontented, but Patience was very quiet. Then Christian asked, What is the reason of the discontent of Passion? The interpreter answered, The governor of them would have him stay for his best things till the beginning of the next year, but he will have all now, but Patience is willing to wait. Then I saw that one came to Passion, and brought him a bag of treasure, and poured it down at his feet, the which he took up and rejoiced therein, and withal laughed Patience to scorn. But I beheld but a while, and he had lavished all away, and had nothing left him but rags. Christian. Then said Christian to the interpreter, Expound this matter more fully to me. Interpreter. So he said, These 2 lads are figures. Passion, of the men of this world, and Patience, of the men of that which is to come, for, as here thou sayest, Passion will have all now this year, that is to say, in this world, so are the men of this world, they must have all their good things now, they cannot stay till next year, that is, until the next world, for their portion of good. That proverb, A bird in the hand is worth 2 in the bush, is of more authority with them than are all the divine testimonies of the good of the world to come. But as thou sawest that he had quickly lavished all away, and had presently left him nothing but rags, so will it be with all such men at the end of this world. Christian. Then said Christian, Now I see that Patience has the best wisdom, and that upon many accounts. First, because he stays for the best things. Second, and also because he will have the glory of his, when the other has nothing but rags. Interpreter. Nay, you may add another, to wit, the glory of the next world will never wear out, but these are suddenly gone. Therefore Passion had not so much reason to laugh at Patience, because he had his good things first, as Patience will have to laugh at Passion, because he had his best things last, for first must give place to last, because last must have his time to come, but last gives place to nothing, for there is not another to succeed. He, therefore, that hath his portion first, must needs have a time to spend it, but he that hath his portion last, must have it lastingly. Therefore it is said of Dives, Thou in thy lifetime receivedst thy good things, and likewise Lazarus evil things, but now he is comforted, and thou art tormented. Christian. Then I perceive it is not best to covet things that are now, but to wait for things to come. Interpreter. You say the truth, for the things which are seen are temporal, but the things which are not seen are eternal. But though this be so, yet since things present, and our fleshly appetite, are such near neighbors one to another, and again, because things to come, and carnal sense, are such strangers one to another, therefore it is that the first of these so suddenly fall into amity, and that distance is so continued between the second. Then I saw in my dream that the interpreter took Christian by the hand, and led him into a place where was a fire burning against a wall, and one standing by it, always casting much water upon it, to quench it, yet did the fire burn higher and hotter. Then said Christian, What means this? The interpreter answered, This fire is the work of grace that is wrought in the heart. He that casts water upon it, to extinguish and put it out, is the devil, but in that thou sayest the fire notwithstanding burn higher and hotter, thou shalt also see the reason of that. So he had him about to the backside of the wall, where he saw a man with a vessel of oil in his hand, of the which he did also continually cast, but secretly, into the fire. Then said Christian, What means this? The interpreter answered, This is Christ, who continually, with the oil of his grace, maintains the work already begun in the heart, by the means of which, notwithstanding what the devil can do, the souls of his people prove gracious still. And in that thou sawest that the man stood behind the wall to maintain the fire, that is to teach thee that it is hard for the tempted to see how this work of grace is maintained in the soul. I saw also, that the interpreter took him again by the hand, and led him into a pleasant place, where was builded a stately palace, beautiful to behold, at the sight of which Christian was greatly delighted. He saw also, upon the top thereof, certain persons walking, who were clothed all in gold. Then said Christian, May we go in thither? Then the interpreter took him, and led him up towards the door of the palace, and behold, at the door stood a great company of men, as desirous to go in, but durst not. There also sat a man at a little distance from the door, at a table side, with a book and his inkhorn before him, to take the name of him that should enter therein. He saw also, that in the doorway stood many men in armor to keep it, being resolved to do the men that would enter what hurt and mischief they could. Now was Christian somewhat in amaze. At last, when every man started back for fear of the armed men, Christian saw a man of a very stout countenance come up to the man that sat there to write, saying, Set down my name, sir, the which when he had done, he saw the man draw his sword, and put an helmet upon his head, and rush toward the door upon the armed men, who laid upon him with deadly force, but the man, not at all discouraged, fell to cutting and hacking most fiercely. So after he had received and given many wounds to those that attempted to keep him out, he cut his way through them all, and pressed forward into the palace, at which there was a pleasant voice heard from those that were within, even of those that walked upon the top of the palace, saying, Come in, come in. Eternal glory thou shalt win. So he went in, and was clothed with such garments as they. Then Christian smiled and said, I think verily I know the meaning of this. Now, said Christian, let me go hence. Nay, stay, said the interpreter, till I have showed thee a little more, and after that thou shalt go on thy way. So he took him by the hand again, and led him into a very dark room, where there sat a man in an iron cage. Now the man, to look on, seemed very sad. He sat with his eyes looking down to the ground, his hands folded together, and he sighed as if he would break his heart. Then said Christian, What means this? At which the interpreter bid him talk with the man. Then said Christian to the man, What art thou? The man answered, I am what I was not once. Christian. What wast thou once, man? The man said, I was once a fair and flourishing professor, both in mine own eyes, and also in the eyes of others. I once was, as I thought, fair for the celestial city, and had then even joy at the thoughts that I should get thither. Christian. Well, but what art thou now? Man. I am now a man of despair, and am shut up in it, as in this iron cage. I cannot get out. Oh, now I cannot. Christian. But how camest thou in this condition? Man. I left off to watch and be sober, I laid the reins upon the neck of my lusts, I sinned against the light of the word, and the goodness of God, I have grieved the Spirit, and he is gone, I tempted the devil, and he is come to me. I have provoked God to anger, and he has left me, I have so hardened my heart, that I cannot repent. Then said Christian to the interpreter, But is there no hope for such a man as this? Ask him, said the interpreter. Nay, said Christian, pray sir, do you? Interpreter. Then said the interpreter, Is there no hope, but you must be kept in the iron cage of despair? Man. No, none at all. Interpreter. Why, the Son of the Blessed is very pitiful. Man. I have crucified him to myself afresh, I have despised his person, I have despised his righteousness, I have counted his blood an unholy thing, I have done despite to the Spirit of grace. Therefore I have shut myself out of all the promises, and there now remains to me nothing but threatenings, dreadful threatenings, fearful threatenings of certain judgment and fiery indignation, which shall devour me as an adversary. Interpreter. For what did you bring yourself into this condition? Man. For the lusts, pleasures, and profits of this world, in the enjoyment of which I did then promise myself much delight, but now every one of those things also bite me, and gnaw me like a burning worm. Interpreter. But canst thou not now repent and turn? Man. God hath denied me repentance. His word gives me no encouragement to believe, yea, himself hath shut me up in this iron cage, nor can all the men in the world let me out. O eternity! Eternity! How shall I grapple with the misery that I must meet with in eternity? Interpreter. Then said the interpreter to Christian, Let this man's misery be remembered by thee, and be an everlasting caution to thee. Christian. Well, said Christian, this is fearful. God help me to watch and be sober, and to pray that I may shun the cause of this man's misery. Sir, is it not time for me to go on my way now? Interpreter. Tarry till I shall show thee one thing more, and then thou shalt go on thy way. So he took Christian by the hand again, and led him into a chamber, where there was one rising out of bed, and as he put on his raiment, he shook and trembled. Then said Christian, Why doth this man thus tremble? The interpreter then bid him tell to Christian the reason of his so doing. So he began and said, This night, as I was in my sleep, I dreamed, and behold the heavens grew exceeding black, also it thundered and lightened in most fearful wise, that it put me into an agony, so I looked up in my dream, and saw the clouds rack at an unusual rate, upon which I heard a great sound of a trumpet, and saw also a man sit upon a cloud, attended with the thousands of heaven, they were all in flaming fire, also the heavens were in a burning flame. I heard then a voice saying, Arise, ye dead, and come to judgment, and with that the rocks rent, the graves opened, and the dead that were therein came forth. Some of them were exceeding glad, and looked upward, and some sought to hide themselves under the mountains. Then I saw the man that sat upon the cloud open the book, and bid the world draw near. Yet there was, by reason of a fierce flame which issued out and came from before him, a convenient distance betwixt him and them, as betwixt the judge and the prisoners at the bar. I heard it also proclaimed to them that attended on the man that sat on the cloud, Gather together the tares, the chaff, and stubble, and cast them into the burning lake, and with that, the bottomless pit opened, just whereabouts I stood, out of the mouth of which there came, in an abundant manner, smoke and coals of fire, with hideous noises. It was also said to the same persons, Gather my wheat into the garner. And with that I saw many catched up and carried away into the clouds, but I was left behind. I also sought to hide myself, but I could not, for the man that sat upon the cloud still kept his eye upon me, my sins also came into my mind, and my conscience did accuse me on every side. Upon this I awaked from my sleep. Christian. But what was it that made you so afraid of this sight? Man. Why, I thought that the day of judgment was come, and that I was not ready for it, but this frightened me most, that the angels gathered up several, and left me behind, also the pit of hell opened her mouth just where I stood. My conscience, too, afflicted me, and, as I thought, the judge had always his eye upon me, showing indignation in his countenance. Then said the interpreter to Christian, Hast thou considered all these things? Christian. Yes, and they put me in hope and fear. Interpreter. Well, keep all things so in thy mind that they may be as a goad in thy sides, to prick thee forward in the way thou must go. Then Christian began to gird up his loins, and to address himself to his journey. Then said the interpreter, The Comforter be always with thee, good Christian, to guide thee in the way that leads to the city. So Christian went on his way, saying, Here I have seen things rare and profitable. Things pleasant, dreadful, things to make me stable in what I have begun to take in hand. Then let me think on them, and understand wherefore they showed me were, and let me be thankful, O good interpreter, to thee. Chapter 5. Proceeds to the cross. Now I saw in my dream, that the highway up which Christian was to go, was fenced on either side with a wall, and that wall was called salvation. Up this way, therefore, did burdened Christian run, but not without great difficulty, because of the load on his back. He ran thus till he came to a place somewhat ascending, and upon that place stood a cross, and a little below, in the bottom, a sepulchre. So I saw in my dream, that just as Christian came up with the cross, his burden loosed from off his shoulders, and fell from off his back, and began to tumble, and so continued to do, till it came to the mouth of the sepulchre, where it fell in, and I saw it no more. Then was Christian glad and lightsome, and said, with a merry heart, He hath given me rest by his sorrow, and life by his death. Then he stood still a while to look and wonder, for it was very surprising to him, that the sight of the cross should thus ease him of his burden. He looked, therefore, and looked again, even till the springs that were in his head sent the waters down his checks. Now, as he stood looking and weeping, behold 3 shining ones came to him and saluted him with, Peace be to thee. So the first said to him, Thy sins be forgiven thee, the second stripped him of his rags, and clothed him with change of raiment, the third also set a mark in his forehead, and gave him a roll with a seal upon it, which he bade him look on as he ran, and that he should give it in at the celestial gate, Ephesians chapter 1, verse 13. So they went their way. Then Christian gave 3 leaps for joy, and went on singing, Thus far I did come laden with my sin, nor could aught ease the grief that I was in till I came hither. What a place is this! Must here be the beginning of my bliss? Must here the burden fall from off my back? Must here the strings that bound it to me crack? Blessed cross! Blessed sepulchre! Blessed rather be the man that there was put to shame for me. I saw then in my dream, that he went on thus, even until he came at a bottom, where he saw, a little out of the way, 3 men fast asleep, with fetters upon their heels. The name of the one was Simple, another Slough, and the third Presumption. Chapter 6. Christian saluted by the 3 shining ones. Christian then seeing them lie in this case, went to them, if peradventure he might awake them, and cried, You are like them that sleep on the top of a mast, for the Dead Sea is under you, a gulf that hath no bottom. Awake, therefore, and come away, be willing also, and I will help you off with your irons. He also told them, If he that goeth about like a roaring lion comes by, you will certainly become a prey to his. With that they looked upon him, and began to reply in this sort. Simple said, I see no danger. Sloth said, Yet a little more sleep, and Presumption said, Every fat must stand upon its own bottom. What is the answer else that I should give thee? And so they lay down to sleep again, and Christian went on his way. Yet was he troubled to think that men in that danger should so little esteem the kindness of him that so freely offered to help them, both by awakening of them, counseling of them, and proffering to help them off with their irons. And as he was troubled thereabout, he espied 2 men come tumbling over the wall, on the left hand of the narrow way, and they made up a pace to him. The name of the one was Formalist, and the name of the other Hypocrisy. So, as I said, they drew up unto him, who thus entered with them into discourse. Christian. Gentlemen, whence came you, and whither go you? Formalist and Hypocrisy. We were born in the land of vainglory, and are going for praise to Mount Shaun. Christian. Why came you not in at the gate, which standeth at the beginning of the way? Know you not that it is written, that he that cometh not in by the door, but climbeth up some other way, the same is a thief and a robber? Formalist and hypocrisy. They said, that to go to the gate for entrance was, by all their countrymen, counted too far about, and that, therefore, their usual way was to make a short cut of it and to climb over the wall, as they had done. Christian. But will it not be counted a trespass against the Lord of the city whither we are bound, thus to violate his revealed will? Formalist and hypocrisy. They told him, that, as for that, he needed not to trouble his head thereabout, for what they did, they had custom for, and could produce, if need were, testimony that would witness it for more than 1,000 years. Christian. But, said Christian, will your practice stand a trial at law? Formalist and hypocrisy. They told him, that custom, it being of so long a standing as above 1,000 years, would, doubtless, now be admitted as a thing legal by any impartial judge, and beside, said they, if we get into the way, what's matter which way we get in? If we are in, thou art but in the way, who, as we perceive, came in at the gate, and we, are also in the way, that came tumbling over the wall, wherein, now, is thy condition better than ours? Christian. I walk by the rule of my master, you walk by the rude working of your fancies. You are counted thieves already, by the Lord of the way, therefore, I doubt you will not be found true men at the end of the way. You come in by yourselves, without his direction, and shall go out by yourselves, without his mercy. To this they made him but little answer, only they bid him look to himself. Then I saw that they went on every man in his way, without much conference one with another, save that these two men told Christian, that as to laws and ordinances, they doubted not but they should as conscientiously do them as he. Therefore, said they, we see not wherein thou differest from us, but by the coat that is on thy back, which was, as we trow given thee by some of thy neighbors, to hide the shame of thy nakedness. Christian. By laws and ordinances you will not be saved, since you came not in by the door. And as for this coat that is on my back, it was given me by the Lord of the place whither I go, and that, as you say, to cover my nakedness with. And I take it as a token of his kindness to me, for I had nothing but rags before. And, besides, thus I comfort myself as I go, surely, think I, when I come to the gate of the city, the Lord thereof will know me for good, since I have his coat on my back, a coat that he gave me in the day that he stripped me of my rags. I have, moreover, a mark in my forehead, of which, perhaps, you have taken no notice, which one of my Lord's most intimate associates fixed there in the day that my burden fell off my shoulders. I will tell you, moreover, that I had then given me a roll, sealed, to comfort me by reading, as I go on the way. I was also bid to give it in at the celestial gate, in token of my certain going in after it, all which things, I doubt, you want, and want them because you came not in at the gate. To these things they gave him no answer, only they looked upon each other, and laughed. Then I saw that they went on all, save that Christian kept before, who had no more talk but with himself, and that sometimes sighingly and sometimes comfortably also he would be often reading in the roll that one of the shining ones gave him, by which he was refreshed. Chapter 7. The Hill of Difficulty. I beheld, then, that they all went on till they came to the foot of the hill Difficulty, at the bottom of which was a spring. There were also in the same place two other ways besides that which came straight from the gate, one turned to the left hand, and the other to the right, at the bottom of the hill, but the narrow way lay right up the hill, and the name of the going up the side of the hill is called Difficulty. Christian now went to the spring, and drank thereof, to refresh himself, and then began to go up the hill, saying, The hill, though high, I covet to ascend, the difficulty will not me offend, for I perceive the way to life lies here. Come, pluck up heart, let's neither faint nor fear, better, though difficult, the right way to go, than wrong, though easy, where the end is woe. The other two also came to the foot of the hill, but when they saw that the hill was steep and high, and that there were two other ways to go, and supposing also that these two ways might meet again, with that up which Christian went, on the other side of the hill, therefore they were resolved to go in those ways. Now the name of one of those ways was Danger, and the name of the other Destruction. So the one took the way which is called Danger, which led him into a great wood, and the other took directly up the way to destruction, which led him into a wide field, full of dark mountains, where he stumbled and fell, and rose no more. I looked, then, after Christian, to see him go up the hill, where I perceived he fell from running to going, and from going to clambering upon his hands and his knees, because of the steepness of the place. Now, about the midway to the top of the hill was a pleasant arbor, made by the Lord of the hill for the refreshing of weary travelers. Thither, therefore, Christian got, where also he sat down to rest him. Then he pulled his roll out of his bosom, and read therein to his comfort. He also now began afresh to take a review of the coat or garment that was given him as he stood by the cross. Thus pleasing himself a while, he at last fell into a slumber, and thence into a fast sleep, which detained him in that place until it was almost night, and in his sleep his roll fell out of his hand. Now, as he was sleeping, there came one to him, and awaked him, saying, Go to the ant, thou sluggard, consider her ways, and be wise. And with that Christian suddenly started up, and sped him on his way, and went apace, till he came to the top of the hill. Now, when he was got up to the top of the hill, there came two men running to meet him amain. The name of the one was Timorous, and of the other Mistrust, to whom Christian said, Sirs, what's the matter? You run the wrong way. Timorous answered, that they were going to the city of Zion, and had got up that difficult place. But, said he, the further we go, the more danger we meet with, wherefore we turned, and are going back again. Yes, said Mistrust, for just before us lie a couple of lions in the way, whether sleeping or waking we know not, and we could not think, if we came within reach, but they would presently pull us in pieces. Christian. Then said Christian, You make me afraid, but whither shall I fly to be safe? If I go back to mine own country, that is prepared for fire and brimstone, and I shall certainly perish there. If I can get to the celestial city, I am sure to be in safety there. I must venture. To go back is nothing but death, to go forward is fear of death, and life everlasting beyond it. I will yet go forward. So Mistrust and Timorous ran down the hill, and Christian went on his way. But, thinking again of what he heard from the men, he felt in his bosom for his roll, that he might read therein, and be comforted, but he felt, and found it not. Then was Christian in great distress, and knew not what to do, for he wanted that which used to relieve him, and that which should have been his pass into the celestial city. Here, therefore, he began to be much perplexed, and knew not what to do. At last, he bethought himself, that he had slept in the arbor that is on the side of the hill, and, falling down upon his knees, he asked God's forgiveness for that his foolish act, and then went back to look for his roll. But all the way he went back, who can sufficiently set forth the sorrow of Christian's heart? Sometimes he sighed, sometimes he wept, and oftentimes he chid himself for being so foolish to fall asleep in that place, which was erected only for a little refreshment for his weariness. Thus therefore he went back, carefully looking on this side, and on that, all the way as he went, if happily he might find his roll, that had been his comfort so many times in his journey. He went thus, till he came again within sight of the arbor where he sat and slept, but that sight renewed his sorrow the more, by bringing again, even afresh, his evil of sleeping into his mind. Thus, therefore, he now went on bewailing his sinful sleep, saying, O wretched man that I am, that I should sleep in the daytime. That I should sleep in the midst of difficulty. That I should so indulge the flesh, as to use that rest for ease to my flesh, which the Lord of the hill hath erected only for the relief of the spirits of pilgrims. How many steps have I took in vain? Thus it happened to Israel, for their sin, they were sent back again by the way of the Red Sea, and I am made to tread those steps with sorrow, which I might have trod with delight, had it not been for this sinful sleep. How far might I have been on my way by this time? I am made to tread those steps thrice over, which I needed not to have trod but once, yea, now also I am like to be benighted, for the day is almost spent. Oh that I had not slept! Now by this time he was come to the arbor again, where for a while he sat down and wept, but at last, as Christian would have it, looking sorrowfully down under the settle, there he espied his roll, the which he, with trembling and haste, catched up, and put it into his bosom. But who can tell how joyful this man was when he had gotten his roll again? For this roll was the assurance of his life and acceptance at the desired haven. Therefore he laid it up in his bosom, gave thanks to God for directing his eye to the place where it lay, and with joy and tears betook himself again to his journey. But oh, how nimbly now did he go up the rest of the hill! Yet, before he got up, the sun went down upon Christian, and this made him again recall the vanity of his sleeping to his remembrance, and thus he again began to condole with himself. O thou sinful sleep! How, for thy sake am I like to be benighted in my journey? I must walk without the sun, darkness must cover the path of my feet, and I must hear the noise of the doleful creatures, because of my sinful sleep. Now also he remembered the story that Mistrust and Timorous told him of, how they were fright with the sight of the lions. Then said Christian to himself again, These beasts range in the night for their prey, and if they should meet with me in the dark, how should I shift them? How should I escape being by them torn in pieces? Thus he went on his way, but while he was thus bewailing his unhappy miscarriage, he lifted up his eyes, and behold there was a very stately palace before him, the name of which was Beautiful, and it stood just by the highway side. So I saw in my dream, that he made haste and went forward, that if possible he might get lodging there. Now before he had gone far, he entered into a very narrow passage, which was about a furlong off of the porter's lodge, and looking very narrowly before him as he went, he espied 2 lions in the way. Now, thought he, I see the dangers that Mistrust and Timorous were driven back by. The lions were chained, but he saw not the chains. Then he was afraid, and thought also himself to go back after them, for he thought nothing but death was before him. But the porter at the lodge, whose name is Watchful, perceiving that Christian made a halt as if he would go back, cried unto him, saying, Is thy strength so small? Fear not the lions, for they are chained, and are placed there for trial of faith where it is, and for discovery of those that have none. Keep in the midst of the path, and no hurt shall come unto thee. Then I saw that he went on, trembling for fear of the lions, but taking good heed to the directions of the porter, he heard them roar, but they did him no harm. Then he clapped his hands, and went on till he came and stood before the gate, where the porter was. Then said Christian to the porter, Sir, what house is this? And may I lodge here tonight? The porter answered, This house was built by the Lord of the Hill, and he built it for the relief and security of pilgrims. The porter also asked whence he was, and whither he was going. Christian, I am come from the city of destruction, and am going to Mount Zion, but because the sun is now set, I desire, if I may, to lodge here tonight. Porter. What is your name? Christian. My name is now Christian, but my name at the first was Graceless. I came of the race of Japheth, whom God will persuade to dwell in the tents of Shem. Porter. But how doth it happen that you come so late? The sun is set. Christian. I had been here sooner, but that, wretched man that I am. I slept in the arbor that stands on the hillside, nay, I had, notwithstanding that, been here much sooner, but that, in my sleep, I lost my evidence, and came without it to the brow of the hill, and then feeling for it, and finding it not, I was forced, with sorrow of heart, to go back to the place where I slept my sleep, where I found it, and now I am come. Porter. Well, I will call out one of the virgins of this place, who will, if she likes your talk, bring you in to the rest of the family, according to the rules of the house. So Watchful, the porter, rang a bell, at the sound of which came out at the door of the house, a grave and beautiful damsel, named Discretion, and asked why she was called. The porter answered, This man is in a journey from the city of destruction to Mount Zion, but being weary and benighted, he asked me if he might lodge here tonight, so I told him I would call for thee, who, after discourse had with him, mayest do as seemeth thee good, even according to the law of the house. Then she asked him whence he was, and whither he was going, and he told her. She asked him also how he got into the way, and he told her. Then she asked him what he had seen and met with in the way, and he told her. And last she asked his name, so he said, It is Christian, and I have so much the more a desire to lodge here tonight, because, by what I perceive, this place was built by the Lord of the Hill, for the relief and security of pilgrims. So she smiled, but the water stood in her eyes, and after a little pause, she said, I will call forth 2 or 3 more of the family. So she ran to the door, and called out Prudence, Piety, and Charity, who, after a little more discourse with him, had him into the family, and many of them meeting him at the threshold of the house, said, Come in, thou blessed of the Lord, this house was built by the Lord of the hill, on purpose to entertain such pilgrims in. Then he bowed his head, and followed them into the house. So when he was come in and sat down, they gave him something to drink, and consented together, that until supper was ready, some of them should have some particular discourse with Christian, for the best improvement of time, and they appointed piety, and prudence, and charity to discourse with him, and thus they began, Piety. Come, good Christian, since we have been so loving to you, to receive you into our house this night, let us, if perhaps we may better ourselves thereby, talk with you of all things that have happened to you in your pilgrimage. Christian. With a very good will, and I am glad that you are so well disposed. Piety. What moved you at first to betake yourself to a pilgrim's life? Christian. I was driven out of my native country, by a dreadful sound that was in mine ears, to wit, that unavoidable destruction did attend me, if I abode in that country place where I was. Piety. But how did it happen that you came out of your country this way? Christian. It was as God would have it, for when I was under the fears of destruction, I did not know whither to go, but by chance there came a man, even to me, as I was trembling and weeping, whose name is Evangelist, and he directed me to the wicket gate, which else I should never have found, and so set me into the way that hath led me directly to this house. Piety. But did you not come by the house of the interpreter? Christian. Yes, and did see such things there, the remembrance of which will stick by me as long as I live, especially 3 things, to wit, how Christ, in despite of Satan, maintains his work of grace in the heart, how the man had sinned himself quite out of hopes of God's mercy, and also the dream of him that thought in his sleep the day of judgment was come. Piety. Why, did you hear him tell his dream? Christian. Yes, and a dreadful one it was. I thought it made my heart ache as he was telling of it, but yet I am glad I heard it. Piety. Was that all that you saw at the house of the interpreter? Christian. No, he took me and had me where he showed me a stately palace, and how the people were clad in gold that were in it, and how there came a venturous man and cut his way through the armed men that stood in the door to keep him out, and how he was bid to come in, and win eternal glory. Methought those things did ravish my heart. I would have stayed at that good man's house a 12-month, but that I knew I had further to go. Piety. And what saw you else in the way? Christian. Saw. Why, I went but a little further, and I saw one, as I thought in my mind, hang bleeding upon the tree, and the very sight of him made my burden fall off my back, for I groaned under a very heavy burden, but then it fell down from off me. It was a strange thing to me, for I never saw such a thing before, and while I stood looking up, for then I could not forbear looking, 3 shining ones came to me. One of them testified that my sins were forgiven me, another stripped me of my rags, and gave me this broidered coat which you see, and the third set the mark which you see in my forehead, and gave me this sealed roll. And with that he plucked it out of his bosom. Piety. But you saw more than this, did you not? Christian. The things that I have told you were the best, yet some other matters I saw, as, namely, I saw 3 men, simple, sloth, and presumption, lie asleep a little out of the way, as I came, with irons upon their heels, but do you think I could awake them? I also saw formality and hypocrisy come tumbling over the wall, to go, as they pretended, to Zion, but they were quickly lost, even as I myself did tell them, but they would not believe. But above all, I found it hard work to get up this hill, and as hard to come by the lions' mouths, and truly if it had not been for the good man, the porter that stands at the gate, I do not know but that after all I might have gone back again, but now, I thank God I am here, and I thank you for receiving of me. Then Prudence thought good to ask him a few questions, and desired his answer to them. Prudence. Do you not think sometimes of the country from whence you came? Christian. Yes, but with much shame and detestation. Truly if I had been mindful of that country from whence I came out, I might have had opportunity to have returned, but now I desire a better country, that is, an heavenly. Prudence. Do you not yet bear away with you some of the things that then you were conversant withal? Christian. Yes, but greatly against my will, especially my inward and carnal cogitations, with which all my countrymen, as well as myself, were delighted, but now all those things are my grief, and might I but choose mine own things, I would choose never to think of those things more, but when I would be doing of that which is best, that which is worst is with me. Prudence. Do you not find sometimes, as if those things were vanquished, which at other times are your perplexity? Christian. Yes, but that is but seldom, but they are to me golden hours, in which such things happen to me. Prudence. Can you remember by what means you find your annoyances, at times, as if they were vanquished? Christian. Yes, when I think what I saw at the cross, that will do it, and when I look upon my broidered coat, that will do it, also when I look into the roll that I carry in my bosom, that will do it, and when my thoughts wax warm about whither I am going, that will do it. Prudence. And what is it that makes you so desirous to go to Mount Zion? Christian. Why, there I hope to see him alive that did hang dead on the cross, and there I hope to be rid of all those things that to this day are in me an annoyance to me. There, they say, there is no death, and there I shall dwell with such company as I like best. For, to tell you truth, I love him, because I was by him eased of my burden, and I am weary of my inward sickness. I would fain be where I shall die no more, and with the company that shall continually cry, Holy, holy, holy. Then said Charity to Christian, Have you a family? Are you a married man? Christian. I have a wife and 4 small children. Charity. And why did you not bring them along with you? Christian. Then Christian wept, and said, Oh, how willingly would I have done it. But they were all of them utterly averse to my going on pilgrimage. Charity. But you should have talked to them, and have endeavored to have shown them the danger of being behind. Christian. So I did, and told them also what God had shown to me of the destruction of our city, but I seemed to them as one that mocked, and they believed me not. Genesis chapter 19, verse 14. Charity. And did you pray to God that he would bless your counsel to them? Christian. Yes, and that with much affection, for you must think that my wife and poor children were very dear unto me. Charity. But did you tell them of your own sorrow, and fear of destruction? For I suppose that destruction was visible enough to you. Christian. Yes, over, and over, and over. They might also see my fears in my countenance, in my tears, and also in my trembling under the apprehension of the judgment that did hang over our heads, but all was not sufficient to prevail with them to come with me. Charity. But what could they say for themselves, why they came not? Christian. Why, my wife was afraid of losing this world, and my children were given to the foolish delights of youth, so what by one thing, and what by another, they left me to wander in this manner alone. Charity. But did you not, with your vain life, damp all that you by words used by way of persuasion to bring them away with you? Christian. Indeed, I cannot commend my life, for I am conscious to myself of many failings therein. I know also, that a man by his conversation may soon overthrow, what by argument or persuasion he doth labor to fasten upon others for their good. Yet this I can say, I was very wary of giving them occasion, by any unseemly action, to make them averse to going on pilgrimage. Yea, for this very thing, they would tell me I was too precise, and that I denied myself of things, for their sakes, in which they saw no evil. Nay, I think I may say, that if what they saw in me did hinder them, it was my great tenderness in sinning against God, or of doing any wrong to my neighbor. Charity. Indeed Cain hated his brother, because his own works were evil, and his brother's righteous, and if thy wife and children have been offended with thee for this, they thereby show themselves to be implacable to good, and, thou hast delivered thy soul from their blood. Now I saw in my dream, that thus they sat talking together until supper was ready. So when they had made ready, they sat down to meat. Now the table was furnished, with fat things, and with wine that was well refined, and all their talk at the table was about the Lord of the hill, as, namely, about what he had done, and wherefore he did what he did, and why he had builded that house. And by what they said, I perceived that he had been a great warrior, and had fought with and slain him that had the power of death, but not without great danger to himself, which made me love him the more. For, as they said, and as I believe, said Christian, he did it with the loss of much blood, but that which put glory of grace into all he did, was, that he did it out of pure love to his country. And besides, there were some of them of the household that said they had been and spoke with him since he did die on the cross, and they have attested that they had it from his own lips, that he is such a lover of poor pilgrims, that the like is not to be found from the east to the west. They, moreover, gave an instance of what they affirmed, and that was, he had stripped himself of his glory, that he might do this for the poor, and that they heard him say and affirm, that he would not dwell in the mountain of Zion alone. They said, moreover, that he had made many pilgrims princes, though by nature they were beggars born, and their original had been the dunghill. Thus they discoursed together till late at night, and after they had committed themselves to their Lord for protection, they betook themselves to rest. The pilgrim they laid in a large upper chamber, whose window opened toward the sun rising. The name of the chamber was Peace, where he slept till break of day, and then he awoke and sang. Where am I now? Is this the love and care of Jesus for the men that pilgrims are? Thus to provide that I should be forgiven, and dwell already the next door to heaven. So, in the morning, they all got up, and after some more discourse, they told him that he should not depart till they had shown him the rarities of that place. And first, they had him into the study, where they showed him records of the greatest antiquity, in which, as I remember my dream, they showed him first the pedigree of the Lord of the Hill, that he was the son of the Ancient of Days, and came by that eternal generation. Here also was more fully recorded the acts that he had done, and the names of many hundreds that he had taken into his service, and how he had placed them in such habitations, that could neither by length of days, nor decays of nature, be dissolved. Then they read to him some of the worthy acts that some of his servants had done, as, how they had subdued kingdoms, wrought righteousness, obtained promises, stopped the mouths of lions, quenched the violence of fire, escaped the edge of the sword, out of weakness were made strong, waxed valiant in fight, and turned to flight the armies of the aliens. They then read again in another part of the records of the house, where it was showed how willing their Lord was to receive into his favor any, even any, though they in time past had offered great affronts to his person and proceedings. Here also were several other histories of many other famous things, of all which Christian had a view, as of things both ancient and modern, together with prophecies and predictions of things that have their certain accomplishment, both to the dread and amazement of enemies, and the comfort and solace of pilgrims. The next day they took him and had him into the armory, where they showed him all manner of furniture, which their Lord had provided for pilgrims, as sword, shield, helmet, breastplate, all-prayer, and shoes that would not wear out. And there was here enough of this to harness out as many men, for the service of their Lord, as there be stars in the heaven for multitude. They also showed him some of the engines with which some of his servants had done wonderful things. They showed him Moses' rod, the hammer and nail with which Jael slew Sisera, the pitchers, trumpets, and lamps too, with which Gibeon put to flight the armies of Midian. Then they showed him the ox's goad wherewith Shamgar slew 600 men. They showed him, also, the jawbone with which Samson did such mighty feats. They showed him, moreover, the sling and stone with which David slew Goliath of Gath, and the sword, also, with which their Lord will kill the man of sin, in the day that he shall rise up to the prey. They showed him, besides, many excellent things, with which Christian was much delighted. This done, they went to their rest again. Then I saw in my dream, that, on the morrow, he got up to go forward, but they desired him to stay till the next day also, and then, said they, we will, if the day be clear, show you the delectable mountains, which, they said, would yet further add to his comfort, because they were nearer the desired haven than the place where at present he was, so he consented and stayed. When the morning was up, they had him to the top of the house, and bid him look south, so he did, and, behold, at a great distance, he saw a most pleasant mountainous country, beautified with woods, vineyards, fruits of all sorts, flowers also, with springs and fountains, very delectable to behold. Then he asked the name of the country. They said it was Emmanuel's land, and it is as common, said they, as this hill is, to and for all the pilgrims. And when thou comest there, from thence, said they, thou mayest see to the gate of the celestial city, as the shepherds that live there will make appear. Now, he bethought himself of setting forward, and they were willing he should, but first, said they, let us go again into the armory. So they did, and when they came there, they harnessed him from head to foot with what was of proof, lest, perhaps, he should meet with assaults in the way. He being, therefore, thus accoutred, walketh out with his friends to the gate, and there he asked the porter if he saw any pilgrims pass by. Then the porter answered, Yes. Christian. Pray, did you know him? Said he. Porter. I asked his name, and he told me it was Faithful. Christian. Oh, said Christian, I know him, he is my townsman, my near neighbor, he comes from the place where I was born. How far do you think he may be before? Porter. He is got by this time below the hill. Christian. Well, said Christian, good porter, the Lord be with thee, and add to all thy blessings much increase, for the kindness that thou hast showed to me. Chapter 8. The Valley of Humiliation. Then he began to go forward, but discretion, piety, charity, and prudence, would accompany him down to the foot of the hill. So they went on together, reiterating their former discourses, till they came to go down the hill. Then, said Christian, as it was difficult coming up, so far as I can see, it is dangerous going down. Yes, said Prudence, so it is, for it is a hard matter for a man to go down into the valley of humiliation, as thou art now, and to catch no slip by the way, therefore, said they, are we come out to accompany thee down the hill. So he began to go down, but very warily, yet he caught a slip or two. Then I saw in my dream that these good companions, when Christian was gone to the bottom of the hill, gave him a loaf of bread, a bottle of wine, and a cluster of raisins, and then he went on his way. But now, in this valley of humiliation, poor Christian was hard put to it, for he had gone but a little way, before he espied a foul fiend coming over the field to meet him, his name is Apollyon. Then did Christian begin to be afraid, and to cast in his mind whether to go back or to stand his ground, but he considered again that he had no armor for his back, and, therefore, thought that to turn the back to him might give him the greater advantage, with ease to pierce him with his darts. Therefore he resolved to venture and stand his ground, for, thought he, had I no more in mine eye than the saving of my life, it would be the best way to stand. So he went on, and Apollyon met him. Now the monster was hideous to behold, he was clothed with scales, like a fish, and they are his pride, he had wings like a dragon, feet like a bear, and out of his belly came fire and smoke, and his mouth was as the mouth of a lion. When he was come up to Christian, he beheld him with a disdainful countenance, and thus began to question with him. Apollyon. Whence come you? And whither are you bound? Christian. I am come from the city of destruction, which is the place of all evil, and am going to the city of Zion. Apollyon. By this I perceive thou art one of my subjects, for all that country is mine, and I am the prince and god of it. How is it, then, that thou hast run away from thy king? Were it not that I hope thou mayest do me more service, I would strike thee now, at one blow, to the ground. Christian. I was born, indeed, in your dominions, but your service was hard, and your wages such as a man could not live on, for the wages of sin is death, therefore, when I was come to years, I did as other considerate persons do, look out, if, perhaps, I might mend myself. Apollyon. There is no prince that will thus lightly lose his subjects, neither will I as yet lose thee, but since thou complainest of thy service and wages, be content to go back, what our country will afford, I do here promise to give thee. Christian. But I have let myself to another, even to the king of princes, and how can I, with fairness, go back with thee? Apollyon. Thou hast done in this according to the proverb, changed a bad for a worse, but it is ordinary for those that have professed themselves his servants, after a while to give him the slip, and return again to me. Do thou so too, and all shall be well. Christian. I have given him my faith, and sworn my allegiance to him, how, then, can I go back from this, and not be hanged as a traitor? Apollyon. Thou didst the same to me, and yet I am willing to pass by all, if now thou wilt yet turn again and go back. Christian. What I promised thee was in my nonage, and, besides, I count the prince under whose banner now I stand as able to absolve me, yea, and to pardon also what I did as to my compliance with thee, and besides, O thou destroying Apollyon. To speak truth, I like his service, his wages, his servants, his government, his company, and country, better than thine, and, therefore, leave off to persuade me further. I am his servant, and I will follow him. Apollyon. Consider again, when thou art in cool blood, what thou art like to meet with in the way that thou goest. Thou knowest that, for the most part, his servants come to an ill end, because they are transgressors against me and my ways. How many of them have been put to shameful deaths? And, besides, thou countest his service better than mine, whereas he never came yet from the place where he is to deliver any that serve him out of their hands. But as for me, how many times, as all the world very well knows, have I delivered, either by power or fraud, those that have faithfully served me, from him and his, though taken by them, and so I will deliver thee. Christian. His forbearing at present to deliver them is on purpose to try their love, whether they will cleave to him to the end. And as for the ill end thou sayest they come to, that is most glorious in their account, for present deliverance, they do not much expect it, for they stay for their glory, and then they shall have it, when their prince comes in his and the glory of the angels. Apollyon. Thou hast already been unfaithful in thy service to him, and how dost thou think to receive wages of him? Christian. Wherein, O Apollyon? Have I been unfaithful to him? Apollyon. Thou didst faint at first setting out, when thou wast almost choked in the gulf of despond, thou didst attempt wrong ways to be rid of thy burden, whereas against thou shouldest have stayed till thy prince had taken it off, thou didst sinfully sleep, and lose thy choice thing, thou wast, also, almost persuaded to go back, at the sight of the lions, and when thou talkest of thy journey, and of what thou hast heard and seen, thou art inwardly desirous of vainglory in all that thou sayest or doest. Christian. All this is true, and much more which thou hast left out, but the prince, whom I serve and honor, is merciful, and ready to forgive, but, besides, these infirmities possessed me in thy country, for there I sucked them in, and I have groaned under them, been sorry for them, and have obtained pardon of my prince. Chapter 9. Combat with Apollyon. Apollyon. Then Apollyon broke out into a grievous rage, saying, I am an enemy to this prince, I hate his person, his laws, and people, I am come out on purpose to withstand thee. Christian. Apollyon, beware what you do, for I am in the king's highway, the way of holiness, therefore take heed to yourself. Apollyon. Then Apollyon straddled quite over the whole breadth of the way, and said, I am void of fear in this matter, prepare thyself to die, for I swear by my infernal den, that thou shalt go no further, here will I spill thy soul. And with that he threw a flaming dart at his breast, but Christian had a shield in his hand, with which he caught it, and so prevented the danger of that. Then did Christian draw, for he saw it was time to bestir him, and Apollyon as fast made at him, throwing darts as thick as hail, by the which, notwithstanding all that Christian could do to avoid it, Apollyon wounded him in his head, his hand, and foot. This made Christian give a little back. Apollyon, therefore, followed his work amain, and Christian again took courage and resisted as manfully as he could. This sore combat lasted for above half a day, even till Christian was almost quite spent, for you must know, that Christian, by reason of his wounds, must needs grow weaker and weaker. Then Apollyon, espying his opportunity, began to gather up close to Christian, and wrestling with him, gave him a dreadful fall, and with that, Christian's sword flew out of his hand. Then said Apollyon, I am sure of thee now. And with that he had almost pressed him to death, so that Christian began to despair of life, but as God would have it, while Apollyon was fetching of his last blow, thereby to make a full end of this good man, Christian nimbly stretched out his hand for his sword, and caught it, saying, Rejoice not against me, O mine enemy, when I fall, I shall arise, and with that gave him a deadly thrust, which made him give back, as one that had received his mortal wound. Christian perceiving that, made at him again, saying, Nay, in all these things we are more than conquerors, through him that loved us, and with that Apollyon spread forth his dragon's wings, and sped him away, that Christian for a season saw him no more. In this combat no man can imagine, unless he had seen and heard as I did, what yelling and hideous roaring Apollyon made all the time of the fight. He spake like a dragon, and, on the other side, what sighs and groans burst from Christian's heart. I never saw him all the while give so much as one pleasant look, till he perceived he had wounded Apollyon with his two-edged sword. Then, indeed, he did smile, and look upward, but it was the most dreadful sight that ever I saw. So when the battle was over, Christian said, I will here give thanks to him that delivered me out of the mouth of the lion, to him that did help me against Apollyon. And so he did, saying, Great Beelzebub, the captain of this fiend, designed my ruin, therefore to this end he sent him harnessed out, and he with rage, that hellish was, did fiercely me engage. But blessed Michael helped me, and I, by dint of sword, did quickly make him fly. Therefore to him let me give lasting praise, and thank and bless his holy name always. Then there came to him a hand, with some of the leaves of the tree of life, the which Christian took, and applied to the wounds that he had received in the battle, and was healed immediately. He also sat down in that place to eat bread, and to drink of the bottle that was given him a little before, so being refreshed, he addressed himself to his journey, with his sword drawn in his hand, for he said, I know not but some other enemy may be at hand. But he met with no other affront from Apollyon quite through this valley. Now, at the end of this valley, was another, the valley of the shadow of death. And Christian must needs go through it, because the way to the celestial city lay through the midst of it. Now this valley is a very solitary place. The prophet Jeremiah thus describes it, a wilderness, a land of deserts, and of pits, a land of drought, and of the shadow of death, a land that no man, but a Christian, passed through, and where no man dwelt. Now here Christian was worse put to it than in his fight with Apollyon, as by the sequel you shall see. I saw then in my dream, that when Christian was got to the borders of the shadow of death, there met him 2 men, children of them that brought up an evil report of the good land, making haste to go back, to whom Christian spake as follows. Christian. Whither are you going? Men. They said, Back. Back. And we would have you to do so too, if either life or peace is prized by you. Christian. Why? What's the matter? Said Christian. Men. Matter. Said they, we were going that way as you are going, and went as far as we durst, and indeed we were almost past coming back, for had we gone a little further, we had not been here to bring the news to thee. Christian. But what have you met with? Said Christian. Men. Why, we were almost in the valley of the shadow of death, but that, by good hap, we looked before us, and saw the danger before we came to it. Christian. But what have you seen? Said Christian. Men. Seen. Why, the valley itself, which is as dark as pitch, we also saw there the hobgoblins, satyrs, and dragons of the pit. We heard also in that valley a continual howling and yelling, as of a people under unutterable misery, who there sat bound in affliction and irons, and over that valley hangs the discouraging clouds of confusion. Death also doth always spread his wings over it. In a word, it is every whit dreadful, being utterly without order. Christian. Then said Christian, I perceive not yet, by what you have said, but that this is my way to the desired haven. Men. Be it thy way, we will not choose it for ours. So they parted, and Christian went on his way, but still with his sword drawn in his hand, for fear lest he should be assaulted. I saw then in my dream so far as this valley reached, there was on the right hand a very deep ditch, that ditch is it into which the blind have led the blind in all ages, and have both there miserably perished. Again, behold, on the left hand, there was a very dangerous quag, into which, if even a good man falls, he can find no bottom for his foot to stand on. Into that quag King David once did fall, and had no doubt therein been smothered, had not he that is able plucked him out. The pathway was here also exceeding narrow, and therefore good Christian was the more put to it, for when he sought, in the dark, to shun the ditch on the one hand, he was ready to tip over into the mire on the other, also when he sought to escape the mire, without great carefulness he would be ready to fall into the ditch. Thus he went on, and I heard him here sigh bitterly, for besides the dangers mentioned above, the pathway was here so dark, that ofttimes, when he lift up his foot to set forward, he knew not where, or upon what he should set it next. About the midst of this valley, I perceived the mouth of hell to be, and it stood also hard by the wayside. Now, thought Christian, what shall I do? And ever and anon the flame and smoke would come out in such abundance, with sparks and hideous noises, things that cared not for Christian's sword, as did Apollyon before, that he was forced to put up his sword, and betake himself to another weapon, called all-prayer. So he cried in my hearing, O Lord, I beseech thee, deliver my soul. Thus he went on a great while, yet still the flames would be reaching towards him. Also he heard doleful voices, and rushings to and fro, so that sometimes he thought he should be torn in pieces, or trodden down like mire in the streets. This frightful sight was seen, and these dreadful noises were heard by him for several miles together. And, coming to a place, where he thought he heard a company of fiends coming forward to meet him, he stopped and began to muse what he had best to do. Sometimes he had half a thought to go back, then again he thought he might be halfway through the valley. He remembered also how he had already vanquished many a danger, and that the danger of going back might be much more than for to go forward, so he resolved to go on. Yet the fiends seemed to come nearer and nearer, but when they were come even almost at him, he cried out with a most vehement voice, I will walk in the strength of the Lord God, so they gave back, and came no further. One thing I would not let slip, I took notice that now poor Christian was so confounded, that he did not know his own voice, and thus I perceived it. Just when he was come over against the mouth of the burning pit, one of the wicked ones got behind him, and stepped up softly to him, and, whisperingly, suggested many grievous blasphemies to him, which he verily thought had proceeded from his own mind. This put Christian more to it than anything that he met with before, even to think that he should now blaspheme him that he loved so much before, yet, if he could have helped it, he would not have done it, but he had not the discretion either to stop his ears, or to know from whence these blasphemies came. When Christian had travelled in this disconsolate condition some considerable time, he thought he heard the voice of a man, as going before him, saying, Though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Then he was glad, and that for these reasons: first, because he gathered from thence, that some who feared God, were in this valley as well as himself. Secondly, for that he perceived God was with them, though in that dark and dismal state, and why not, thought he, with me? Though, by reason of the impediment that attends this place, I cannot perceive it. Thirdly, for that he hoped, could he overtake them, to have company by and by. So he went on, and called to him that was before, but he knew not what to answer, for that he also thought himself to be alone. And by the day broke, then said Christian, He hath turned the shadow of death into the morning. Now morning being come, he looked back, not out of desire to return, but to see, by the light of the day, what hazards he had gone through in the dark. So he saw more perfectly the ditch that was on the one hand, and the quag that was on the other. Also how narrow the way was which led betwixt them both, also now he saw the hobgoblins, and satyrs, and dragons of the pit, but all afar off, for after break of day, they came not nigh, yet they were discovered to him, according to that which is written, He discovereth deep things out of darkness, and bringeth out to light the shadow of death. Now was Christian much affected with his deliverance from all the dangers of his solitary way, which dangers, though he feared them more before, yet he saw them more clearly now, because the light of the day made them conspicuous to him. And about this time the sun was rising, and this was another mercy to Christian, for you must note, that though the first part of the valley of the shadow of death was dangerous, yet this second part which he was yet to go, was, if possible, far more dangerous, for from the place where he now stood, even to the end of the valley, the way was all along set so full of snares, traps, gins, and nets here, and so full of pits, pitfalls, deep holes, and shelvings down there, that had it now been dark, as it were when he came the first part of the way, had he had 1,000 souls, they had in reason been cast away, but, as I said, just now the sun was rising. Then said he, His candle shineth upon my head, and by his light I walk through darkness. In this light, therefore, he came to the end of the valley. Now I saw in my dream, that at the end of this valley lay blood, bones, ashes, and mangled bodies of men, even of pilgrims that had gone this way formerly, and while I was musing what should be the reason, I espied a little before me a cave, where 2 giants, Pope and Pagan, dwelt in old time, by whose power and tyranny the men whose bones, blood, ashes, etc. lay there, were cruelly put to death. But by this place Christian went without much danger, whereat I somewhat wondered, but I have learnt since, that Pagan has been dead many a day, and as for the other, though he be yet alive, he is, by reason of age, and also of the many shrewd brushes that he met with in his younger days, grown so crazy and stiff in his joints, that he can now do little more than sit in his cave's mouth, grinning at pilgrims as they go by, and biting his nails because he cannot come at them. So I saw that Christian went on his way, yet, at the sight of the old man that sat in the mouth of the cave, he could not tell what to think, especially because he spake to him, though he could not go after him, saying, You will never mend, till more of you be burned. But he held his peace, and set a good face on it, and so went by and catched no hurt. Then sang Christian, O world of wonders! I can say no less, that I should be preserved in that distress that I have met with here. O blessed be that hand that from it hath delivered me. Dangers and darkness, devils, hell, and sin, did compass me, while I this vale was in, yea, snares, and pits, and traps, and nets, did lie my path about, that worthless, silly I might have been catched, entangled, and cast down, but since I live, let Jesus wear the crown. Now, as Christian went on his way, he came to a little ascent, which was cast up on purpose, that pilgrims might see before them. Up there, therefore, Christian went, and looking forward, he saw Faithful before him, upon his journey. Then said Christian aloud, Ho! Ho! So ho! Stay, and I will be your companion. At that, Faithful looked behind him, to whom Christian cried again, Stay, stay, till I come up to you. But Faithful answered, No, I am upon my life, and the avenger of blood is behind me. Chapter 10. Christian overtakes Faithful. At this, Christian was somewhat moved, and putting to all his strength, he quickly got up with Faithful, and did also overrun him, so the last was first. Then did Christian vaingloriously smile, because he had gotten the start of his brother, but not taking good heed to his feet, he suddenly stumbled and fell, and could not rise again, until Faithful came up to help him. Then I saw in my dream, they went very lovingly on together, and had sweet discourse of all things that had happened to them in their pilgrimage, and thus Christian began. Christian, my honored and well-beloved brother, Faithful, I am glad that I have overtaken you, and that God has so tempered our spirits, that we can walk as companions in this so pleasant a path. Faithful. I had thought, dear friend, to have had your company quite from our town, but you did get the start of me, wherefore I was forced to come thus much of the way alone. Christian. How long did you stay in the city of destruction, before you set out after me on your pilgrimage? Faithful. Till I could stay no longer, for there was great talk presently after you were gone out, that our city would, in short time, with fire from heaven, be burned down to the ground. Christian. What? Did your neighbors talk so? Faithful. Yes, it was for a while in everybody's mouth. Christian. What? And did no more of them but you come out to escape the danger? Faithful. Though there were, as I said, a great talk thereabout, yet I do not think they did firmly believe it, for in the heat of the discourse, I heard some of them deridingly speak of you, and of your desperate journey, for so they called this your pilgrimage, but I did believe, and do still, that the end of our city will be with fire and brimstone from above, and therefore I have made my escape. Christian. Did you hear no talk of neighbor Pliable? Faithful. Yes, Christian, I heard that he followed you till he came at the Slough of Despond, where, as some said, he fell in, but he would not be known to have so done, but I am sure he was soundly bedabbled with that kind of dirt. Christian. And what said the neighbors to him? Faithful. He hath, since his going back, been had greatly in derision, and that among all sorts of people, some do mock and despise him, and scarce will any set him on work. He is now 7 times worse than if he had never gone out of the city. Christian. But why should they be so set against him, since they also despise the way that he forsook? Faithful. Oh! They say, hang him, he is a turncoat, he was not true to his profession. I think God has stirred up even his enemies to hiss at him, and make him a proverb, because he hath forsaken the way. Christian. Had you no talk with him before you came out? Faithful. I met him once in the streets, but be leered away on the other side, as one ashamed of what he had done, so I spake not to him. Christian. Well, at my first setting out, I had hopes of that man, but now I fear he will perish in the overthrow of the city, for it has happened to him according to the true proverb, the dog is turned to his own vomit again, and the sow that was washed, to her wallowing in the mire. Faithful. These are my fears of him too, but who can hinder that which will be? Christian. Well, neighbor faithful, said Christian, let us leave him, and talk of things that more immediately concern ourselves. Tell me now, what you have met with in the way as you came, for I know you have met with some things, or else it may be writ for a wonder. Faithful. I escaped the slough that I perceived you fell into, and got up to the gate without that danger, only I met with one whose name was Wanton, who had like to have done me a mischief. Christian. It was well you escaped her net, Joseph was hard put to it by her, and he escaped her as you did, but it had like to have cost him his life. But what did she do to you? Faithful. You cannot think, but that you know something, what a flattering tongue she had, she lay at me hard to turn aside with her, promising me all manner of content. Christian. Nay, she did not promise you the content of a good conscience. Faithful. You know what I mean, all carnal and fleshly content. Christian. Thank God you have escaped her, the abhorred of the Lord shall fall into her ditch, Proverbs chapter 22, verse 14. Faithful. Nay, I know not whether I did wholly escape her or no. Christian. Why, I trow you did not consent to her desires. Faithful. No, not to defile myself, for I remembered an old writing that I had seen, which said, her steps take hold on hell. So I shut mine eyes, because I would not be bewitched with her looks. Then she railed on me, and I went my way. Christian. Did you meet with no other assault as you came? Faithful. When I came to the foot of the hill called Difficulty, I met with a very aged man, who asked me what I was, and whither bound. I told him that I am a pilgrim, going to the celestial city. Then said the old man, Thou lookest like an honest fellow, wilt thou be content to dwell with me for the wages that I shall give thee? Then I asked him his name, and where he dwelt. He said his name was Adam the First, and that he dwelt in the town of Deceit. I asked him then, what was his work, and what the wages that he would give. He told me, that his work was many delights, and his wages, that I should be his heir at last. I further asked him, what house he kept, and what other servants he had. So he told me, that his house was maintained with all the dainties in the world, and that his servants were those of his own begetting. Then I asked if he had any children. He said that he had but 3 daughters, the lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, and the pride of life, and that I should marry them all if I would. Then I asked how long time he would have me live with him. And he told me, as long as he lived himself. Christian. Well, and what conclusion came the old man and you to, at last? Faithful. Why, at first, I found myself somewhat inclinable to go with the man, for I thought he spake very fair, but looking in his forehead, as I talked with him, I saw there written, Put off the old man with his deeds. Christian. And how then? Faithful. Then it came burning hot into my mind, whatever he said, and however he flattered, when he got me home to his house, he would sell me for a slave. So I bid him forbear to talk, for I would not come near the door of his house. Then he reviled me, and told me, that he would send such a one after me, that should make my way bitter to my soul. So I turned to go away from him, but just as I turned myself to go thence, I felt him take hold of my flesh, and give me such a deadly twitch back, that I thought he had pulled part of me after himself. This made me cry, O wretched man! So I went on my way up the hill. Now when I had got about halfway up, I looked behind, and saw one coming after me, swift as the wind, so he overtook me just about the place where the settle stands. Christian. Just there, said Christian, did I sit down to rest me, but being overcome with sleep, either lost this roll out of my bosom. Faithful. But, good brother, hear me out. So soon as the man overtook me, he was but a word and a blow, for down he knocked me, and laid me for dead. But when I was a little come to myself again, I asked him wherefore he served me so. He said, because of my secret inclining to Adam the first, and with that he struck me another deadly blow on the breast, and beat me down backward, so I lay at his foot as dead as before. So, when I came to myself again, I cried him mercy, but he said, I know not how to show mercy, and with that knocked me down again. He had doubtless made an end of me, but that one came by, and bid him forbear. Christian. Who was that bid him forbear? Faithful. I did not know him at first, but as he went by, I perceived the holes in his hands, and in his side, then I concluded that he was our Lord. So I went up the hill. Christian. That man that overtook you was Moses. He spareth none, neither knoweth he how to show mercy to those that transgress his law. Faithful. I know it very well, it was not the first time that he has met with me. It was he that came to me when I dwelt securely at home, and that told me he would burn my house over my head, if I stayed there. Christian. But did you not see the house that stood there on the top of the hill, on the side of which Moses met you? Faithful. Yes, and the lions too, before I came at it, but for the lions, I think they were asleep, for it was about noon, and because I had so much of the day before me, I passed by the porter, and came down the hill. Christian. He told me indeed, that he saw you go by, but I wish you had called at the house, for they would have showed you so many rarities, that you would scarce have forgot them to the day of your death. But pray tell me, did you meet nobody in the valley of humility? Faithful. Yes, I met with one discontent, who would willingly have persuaded me to go back again with him. His reason was, for that the valley was altogether without honor. He told me, moreover, that there to go was the way to disobey all my friends, as pride, arrogancy, self-conceit, worldly glory, with others, who, he knew, as he said, would be very much offended, if I made such a fool of myself as to wade through this valley. Christian. Well, and how did you answer him? Faithful. I told him that although all these that he named might claim kindred of me, and that rightly, for indeed they were my relations according to the flesh, yet since I became a pilgrim, they have disowned me, as I also have rejected them, and therefore they were to me now no more than if they had never been of my lineage. I told him, moreover, that as to this valley he had quite misrepresented the thing, for before honor is humility, and a haughty spirit before a fall. Therefore, said I had rather go through this valley to the honor that was so accounted by the wisest, than choose that which he esteemed most worthy our affections. Christian. Met you with nothing else in that valley? Faithful. Yes, I met with shame, but of all the men that I met with in my pilgrimage, he, I think, bears the wrong name. The others would be said nay, after a little argumentation, and somewhat else, but this bold-faced shame would never have done. Christian. Why, what did he say to you? Faithful. What? Why, he objected against religion itself. He said it was a pitiful, low, sneaking business for a man to mind religion. He said that a tender conscience was an unmanly thing, and that for a man to watch over his words and ways, so as to tie up himself from that hectoring liberty, that the brave spirits of the times accustomed themselves unto, would make him the ridicule of the times. He objected also, that but few of the mighty, rich, or wise, were ever of my opinion, nor any of them neither, before they were persuaded to be fools, and to be of a voluntary fondness, to venture the loss of all, for nobody knows what. He moreover objected the base and low estate and condition of those that were chiefly the pilgrims, of the times in which they lived, also their ignorance, and want of understanding in all natural science. Yea, he did hold me to it at that rate also, about a great many more things than here I relate, as, that it was a shame to sit whining and mourning under a sermon, and a shame to come sighing and groaning home, that it was a shame to ask my neighbor forgiveness for petty faults, or to make restitution where I have taken from any. He said also, that religion made a man grow strange to the great, because of a few vices, which he called by finer names, and made him own and respect the base, because of the same religious fraternity. And is not this, said he, a shame? Christian. And what did you say to him? Faithful. Say. I could not tell what to say at the first. Yea, he put me so to it, that my blood came up in my face, even this shame fetched it up, and had almost beat me quite off. But, at last, I began to consider, that which is highly esteemed among men, is had in abomination with God. And I thought again, this shame tells me what men are, but it tells me nothing what God, or the word of God is. And I thought, moreover, that at the day of doom, we shall not be doomed to death or life, according to the hectoring spirits of the world, but according to the wisdom and law of the highest. Therefore, thought I, what God says is best, indeed is best, though all the men in the world are against it. Seeing, then, that God prefers his religion, seeing God prefers a tender conscience, seeing they that make themselves fools for the kingdom of heaven are wisest, and that the poor man that loveth Christ is richer than the greatest man in the world that hates him, shame, depart, thou art an enemy to my salvation. Shall I entertain thee against my sovereign Lord? How then shall I look him in the face at his coming? Should I now be ashamed of his ways and servants, how can I expect the blessing? But, indeed, this shame was a bold villain, I could scarce shake him out of my company, yea, he would be haunting of me, and continually whispering me in the ear, with some one or other of the infirmities that attend religion. But at last I told him it was but in vain to attempt further in this business, for those things that he disdained, in those did I see most glory, and so at last I got past this importunate one. And when I had shaken him off, then I began to sing. The trials that those men do meet withal, that are obedient to the heavenly call, are manifold, and suited to the flesh, and come again afresh, that now, or sometime else, we by them may be taken, overcome, and cast away. O let the pilgrims, then, be vigilant, and quit themselves like men. Christian. I am glad, my brother, that thou didst withstand this villain so bravely, for of all, as thou sayest, I think he has the wrong name, for he is so bold as to follow us in the streets, and to attempt to put us to shame before all men, that is, to make us ashamed of that which is good, but if he were not himself audacious, he would never attempt to do as he does. But let us still resist him, for notwithstanding all his bravadoes, he promiteth the fool, and none else. The wise shall inherit glory, said Solomon, but shame shall be the promotion of fools. Faithful. I think we must cry to him for help against shame, who would have us to be valiant for the truth upon the earth. Christian. You say true, but did you meet nobody else in that valley? Faithful. No, not I, for I had sunshine all the rest of the way through that, and also through the valley of the shadow of death. Christian. It was well for you. I am sure it fared far otherwise with me. I had for a long season, as soon almost as I entered into that valley, a dreadful combat with that foul fiend Apollyon. Yea, I thought verily he would have killed me, especially when he got me down and crushed me under him, as if he would have crushed me to pieces, for as he threw me, my sword flew out of my hand. Nay, he told me he was sure of me, but I cried to God, and he heard me, and delivered me out of all my troubles. Then I entered into the valley of the shadow of death, and had no light for almost half the way through it. I thought I should have been killed there, over and over, but at last day broke, and the sun rose, and I went through that which was behind with far more ease and quiet. Moreover, I saw in my dream, that as they went on, Faithful, as he chanced to look on one side, saw a man whose name is Talkative, walking at a distance besides them, for in this place, there was room enough for them all to walk. He was a tall man, and something more comely at a distance than at hand. To this man Faithful addressed himself in this manner. Faithful. Friend, whither away? Are you going to the heavenly country? Talkative. I am going to the same place. Faithful. That is well, then I hope we may have your good company. Talkative. With a very good will I be your companion. Faithful. Come on, then, and let us go together, and let us spend our time in discoursing of things that are profitable. Talkative. To talk of things that are good, to me is very acceptable, with you, or with any other, and I am glad that I have met with those that incline to so good a work, for, to speak the truth, there are but few that care thus to spend their time, as they are in their travels, but choose much rather to be speaking of things to no profit, and this hath been a trouble to me. Faithful. That is indeed a thing to be lamented, for what things so worthy of the use of the tongue and mouth of men on earth, as are the things of the God of heaven? Talkative. I like you wonderful well, for your sayings are full of conviction, and I will add, what thing is so pleasant, and what so profitable, as to talk of the things of God? What things so pleasant, that is, if a man hath any delight in things that are wonderful. For instance, if a man doth delight to talk of the history or the mystery of things, or if a man doth love to talk of miracles, wonders, or signs, where shall he find things recorded so delightful, and so sweetly penned, as in the Holy Scripture? Faithful. That is true, but to be profited by such things in our talk should be that which we design. Talkative. That is it that I said, for to talk of such things is most profitable, for by so doing, a man may get knowledge of many things, as of the vanity of earthly things, and the benefit of things above. Thus, in general, but more particularly, by this, a man may learn the necessity of the new birth, the insufficiency of our works, the need of Christ's righteousness, etc. Besides, by this a man may learn, by talk, what it is to repent, to believe, to pray, to suffer, or the like. By this also a man may learn what are the great promises and consolations of the gospel, to his own comfort. Further, by this a man may learn to refute false opinions, to vindicate the truth, and also to instruct the ignorant. Faithful. All this is true, and glad am I to hear these things from you. Talkative. Alas! The want of this is the cause why so few understand the need of faith, and the necessity of a work of grace in their soul, in order to eternal life, but ignorantly live in the works of the law, by which a man can by no means obtain the kingdom of heaven. Faithful. But, by your leave, heavenly knowledge of these is the gift of God, no man attaineth to them by human industry, or only by the talk of them. Talkative. All this I know very well. For a man can receive nothing, except it be given him from heaven, all is of grace, not of works. I could give you 100 scriptures for the confirmation of this. Faithful. Well, then, said Faithful, what is that one thing that we shall at this time found our discourse upon? Talkative. What you will. I will talk of things heavenly, or things earthly, things moral, or things evangelical, things sacred, or things profane, things past, or things to come, things foreign, or things at home, things more essential, or things circumstantial, provided that all be done to our profit. Faithful. Now did Faithful begin to wonder, and stepping to Christian, for he walked all this while by himself, he said to him, but softly, what a brave companion have we got. Surely this man will make a very excellent pilgrim. Christian. At this Christian modestly smiled, and said, this man, with whom you are so taken, will beguile, with that tongue of his, of them that know him not. Faithful. Do you know him, then? Christian. Know him. Yes, better than he knows himself. Faithful. Pray, what is he? Christian. His name is Talkative, he dwelleth in our town. I wonder that you should be a stranger to him, only I consider that our town is large. Faith. Whose son is he? And whereabout does he dwell? Christian. He is the son of one say well, he dwelt in Prating Row, and he is known of all that are acquainted with him, by the name of Talkative in Prating Row, and notwithstanding his fine tongue, he is but a sorry fellow. Faithful. Well, he seems to be a very pretty man. Christian. That is, to them who have not thorough acquaintance with him, for he is best abroad, near home, he is ugly enough. Your saying that he is a pretty man, brings to my mind what I have observed in the work of the painter, whose pictures show best at a distance, but, very near, more unpleasing. Faithful. But I am ready to think you do but jest, because you smiled. Christian. God forbid that I should jest, although I smiled, in this matter, or that I should accuse any falsely. I will give you a further discovery of him. This man is for any company, and for any talk, as he talketh now with you, so will he talk when he is on the ale-bench, and the more drink he hath in his crown, the more of these things he hath in his mouth. Religion hath no place in his heart, or house, or conversation, all he hath, lieth in his tongue, and his religion is to make a noise therewith. Faithful. Say you so? Then am I in this man greatly deceived. Christian. Deceived. You may be sure of it. Remember the proverb, they say, and do not. But the kingdom of God is not in word, but in power. He talketh of prayer, of repentance, of faith, and of the new birth, but he knows but only to talk of them. I have been in his family, and have observed him both at home and abroad, and I know what I say of him is the truth. His house is as empty of religion, as the white of an egg is of savour. There is there neither prayer, nor sign of repentance for sin, yea, the brute in his kind serves God far better than he. He is the very stain, reproach, and shame of religion, to all that know him. It can hardly have a good word in all that end of the town where he dwells, through him. Thus say the common people that know him, a saint abroad, and a devil at home. His poor family finds it so, he is such a churl, such a railer at, and so unreasonable with his servants, that they neither know how to do for, or speak to him. Men that have any dealings with him, say, it is better to deal with a Turk than with him, for fairer dealing they shall have at their hands. This talkative, if it be possible, will go beyond them, defraud, beguile, and overreach them. Besides, he brings up his sons to follow his steps, and if he findeth in any of them a foolish timorousness, for so he calls the first appearance of a tender conscience, he calls them fools, and blockheads, and by no means will employ them in much, or speak to their commendations before others. For my part, I am of opinion, that he has, by his wicked life, caused many to stumble and fall, and will be, if God prevent not, the ruin of many more. Faithful. Well, my brother, I am bound to believe you, not only because you say you know him, but also because, like a Christian, you make your reports of men. For I cannot think that you speak these things of ill will, but because it is even so as you say. Christian. Had I known him no more than you, I might perhaps have thought of him as, at the first, you did, yea, had he received this report at their hands only that are enemies to religion, I should have thought it had been a slander, a lot that often falls from bad men's mouths upon good men's names and professions. But all these things, yea, and a great many more as bad, of my own knowledge, I can prove him guilty of. Besides, good men are ashamed of him, they can neither call him brother, nor friend, the very naming of him among them makes them blush, if they know him. Faithful. Well, I see that saying and doing are two things, and hereafter I shall better observe this distinction. Christian. They are two things indeed, and are as diverse as are the soul and the body, for as the body without the soul is but a dead carcass, so saying, if it be alone, is but a dead carcass also. The soul of religion is the practical part, pure religion and undefiled, before God and the Father, is this, to visit the fatherless and widows in their affliction, and to keep himself unspotted from the world. This talkative is not aware of, he thinks that hearing and saying will make a good Christian, and thus he deceiveth his own soul. Hearing is but as the sowing of the seed, talking is not sufficient to prove that fruit is indeed in the heart and life, and let us assure ourselves, that at the day of doom men shall be judged according to their fruits. It will not be said then, did you believe? But, were you doers, or talkers only? And accordingly shall they be judged. The end of the world is compared to our harvest, and you know men at harvest regard nothing but fruit. Not that anything can be accepted that is not of faith, but I speak this to show you how insignificant the profession of talkative will be at that day. Faithful. This brings to my mind that of Moses, by which he describeth the beast that is clean. He is such a one that parteth the hoof and cheweth the cud, not that parteth the hoof only, or that cheweth the cud only. The hare cheweth the cud, but yet is unclean, because he parteth not the hoof. And this truly resembleth talkative, he cheweth the cud, he seeketh knowledge, he cheweth upon the word, but he divideth not the hoof, he parteth not with the way of sinners, but, as the hare, he retaineth the foot of a dog or bear, and therefore he is unclean. Christian. You have spoken, for aught I know, the true gospel sense of those texts. And I will add another thing, Paul calleth some men, yea, and those great talkers too, sounding brass, and tinkling cymbals, that is, as he expounds them in another place, things without life, giving sound. Things without life, that is, without the true faith and grace of the gospel, and consequently, things that shall never be placed in the kingdom of heaven among those that are the children of life, though their sound, by their talk, be as if it were the tongue or voice of an angel. Faithful. Well, I was not so fond of his company at first, but I am as sick of it now. What shall we do to be rid of him? Christian. Take my advice, and do as I bid you, and you shall find that he will soon be sick of your company too, except God shall touch his heart, and turn it. Faithful. What would you have me to do? Christian. Why, go to him, and enter into some serious discourse about the power of religion, and ask him plainly, when he has approved of it, for that he will, whether this thing be set up in his heart, house, or conversation. Faithful. Then Faithful stepped forward again, and said to Talkative, Come, what cheer? How is it now? Talkative. Thank you, well. I thought we should have had a great deal of talk by this time. Faithful. Well, if you will, we will fall to it now, and since you left it with me to state the question, let it be this: how doth the saving grace of God discover itself, when it is in the heart of man? Talkative. I perceive then, that our talk must be about the power of things. Well, it is a very good question, and I shall be willing to answer you. And take my answer in brief, thus: first, where the grace of work of God is in the heart, it causeth there a great outcry against sin. Secondly. Faithful. Nay, hold, let us consider of one at once. I think you should rather say, it shows itself by inclining the soul to abhor its sin. Talkative. Why, what difference is there between crying out against, and abhorring of sin? Faithful. Oh. A great deal. A man may cry out against sin of policy, but he cannot abhor it, but by virtue of a godly antipathy against it. I have heard many cry out against sin in the pulpit, who yet can abide it well enough in the heart, house, and conversation. Joseph's mistress cried out with a loud voice, as if she had been very holy, but she would willingly, notwithstanding that, have committed uncleanness with him. Some cry out against sin, even as the mother cries out against her child in her lap, when she calleth it slut and naughty girl, and then falls to hugging and kissing it. Talkative. You lie at the catch, I perceive. Faithful. No, not I am only for setting things right. But what is the second thing whereby you would prove a discovery of a work of grace in the heart? Talkative. Great knowledge of gospel mysteries. Faithful. This sign should have been first, but first or last, it is also false, for knowledge, great knowledge, may be obtained in the mysteries of the gospel, and yet no work of grace in the soul. Yea, if a man have all knowledge, he may yet be nothing, and so consequently be no child of God. When Christ said, Do you know all these things? And the disciples had answered, Yes, he addeth, Blessed are ye if ye do them. He doth not lay the blessing in the knowing of them, but in the doing of them. For there is a knowledge that is not attended with doing, he that knoweth his master's will, and doeth it not. A man may know like an angel, and yet be no Christian, therefore your sign of it is not true. Indeed, to know is a thing that pleaseth talkers and boasters, but to do is that which pleaseth God. Not that the heart can be good without knowledge, for without that the heart is naught. There is, therefore, knowledge and knowledge. Knowledge that resteth in the bare speculation of things, and knowledge that is accompanied with the grace of faith and love, which puts a man upon doing even the will of God from the heart. The first of these will serve the talker, but without the other the true Christian is not content. Give me understanding, and I shall keep thy law, yea, I shall observe it with my whole heart. Talkative. You lie at the catch again, this is not for edification. Faithful. Well, if you please, propound another sign how this work of grace discovereth itself where it is. Talkative. Not I, for I see we shall not agree. Faithful. Well, if you will not, will you give me leave to do it? Talkative. You may use your liberty. Faithful. A work of grace in the soul discovereth itself, either to him that hath it, or to standers by. To him that hath it thus, it gives him conviction of sin, especially of the defilement of his nature and the sin of unbelief, for the sake of which he is sure to be damned, if he findeth not mercy at God's hand, by faith in Jesus Christ. This sight and sense of things worketh in him sorrow and shame for sin, he findeth, moreover, revealed in him the Saviour of the world, and the absolute necessity of closing with him for life, at the which he findeth hungerings and thirstings after him, to which hungerings, etc. the promise is made. Now, according to the strength or weakness of his faith in his Saviour, so is his joy and peace, so is his love to holiness, so are his desires to know him more, and also to serve him in this world. But though I say it discovereth itself thus unto him, yet it is but seldom that he is able to conclude that this is a work of grace, because his corruptions now, and his abused reason, make his mind to misjudge in this matter. Therefore, in him that hath this work, there is required a very sound judgment before he can, with steadiness, conclude that this is a work of grace. To others, it is thus discovered, 1. By an experimental confession of his faith in Christ. 2. By a life answerable to that confession, to wit, a life of holiness, heart holiness, family holiness, if he hath a family, and by conversation holiness in the world, which, in the general, teacheth him, inwardly, to abhor his sin, and himself for that, in secret, to suppress it in his family, and to promote holiness in the world, not by talk only, as a hypocrite or talkative person may do, but by a practical subjection, in faith and love, to the power of the word. And now, sir, as to this brief description of the work of grace, and also the discovery of it, if you have aught to object, object, if not, then give me leave to propound to you a second question. Talkative. Nay, my part is not now to object, but to hear. Let me, therefore, have your second question. Faithful. It is this: do you experience this first part of this description of it? And doth your life and conversation testify the same? Or standeth your religion in word or in tongue, and not in deed and truth? Pray, if you incline to answer me in this, say no more than you know the God above will say Amen to, and, also, nothing but what your conscience can justify you in, for, not he that commendeth himself is approved, but whom the Lord commendeth. Besides, to say, I am thus, and thus, when my conversation, and all my neighbors, tell me I lie, is great wickedness. Talkative. Then Talkative at first began to blush, but, recovering himself, thus he replied, You come now to experience, to conscience, and God, and to appeal to him for justification of what is spoken. This kind of discourse I did not expect, nor am I disposed to give an answer to such questions, because I count not myself bound thereto, unless you take upon you to be a catechizer, and, though you should so do, yet I may refuse to make you my judge. But, I pray, will you tell me why you ask me such questions? Faithful. Because I saw you forward to talk, and because I knew not that you had aught else but notion. Besides, to tell you all the truth, I have heard of you, that you are a man whose religion lies in talk, and that your conversation gives this your mouth profession the lie. They say, you are a spot among Christians, and that religion fareth the worse for your ungodly conversation, that some already have stumbled at your wicked ways, and that more are in danger of being destroyed thereby. Your religion, and an alehouse, and covetousness, and uncleanness, and swearing, and lying, and vain company keeping, etc. will stand together. The proverb is true of you which is said of a whore, to wit, that she is a shame to all women, so are you a shame to all professors. Talkative. Since you are ready to take up reports, and to judge so rashly as you do, I cannot but conclude you are some peevish or melancholy man, not fit to be discoursed with, and so adieu. Christian. Then came up Christian, and said to his brother, I told you how it would happen, your words and his lusts could not agree, he had rather leave your company than reform his life. But he is gone, as I said, let him go, the loss is no man's but his own, he has saved us the trouble of going from him, for he continuing, as I suppose he will do, as he is, he would have been but a blot in our company. Besides, the apostle says, from such withdraw thyself. Faithful. But I am glad we had this little discourse with him, it may happen that he will think of it again. However, I have dealt plainly with him, and so am clear of his blood, if he perisheth. Christian. You did well to talk so plainly to him as you did, there is but little of this faithful dealing with men nowadays, and that makes religion to stink so in the nostrils of many, as it doth, for they are these talkative fools whose religion is only in word, and are debauched and vain in their conversation, that, being so much admitted into the fellowship of the godly, do puzzle the world, blemish Christianity, and grieve the sincere. I wish that all men would deal with such as you have done, then should they either be made more conformable to religion, or the company of saints would be too hot for them. Then did Faithful say, how talkative at first lifts up his plumes. How bravely doth he speak. How he presumes to drive down all before him. But so soon as Faithful talks of heart work, like the moon that's past the full, into the wane he goes. And so will all, but he that heart work knows. Thus they went on talking of what they had seen by the way, and so made that way easy which would, otherwise, no doubt, have been tedious to them, for now they went through a wilderness. Now, when they were got almost quite out of this wilderness, Faithful chanced to cast his eye back, and espied one coming after them, and he knew him. "Oh," said Faithful to his brother, "who comes yonder?" Then Christian looked, and said, "It is my good friend Evangelist." "Aye, and my good friend too," said Faithful, "for it was he that set me the way to the gate." Now was Evangelist come up unto them, and thus saluted them, Evangelist. "Peace be with you, dearly beloved, and peace be to your helpers." Christian. "Welcome, welcome, my good Evangelist, the sight of thy countenance brings to my remembrance thy ancient kindness and unwearied laboring for my eternal good." Faithful. "And 1,000 times welcome," said good Faithful. "Thy company, O sweet Evangelist, how desirable it is to us poor pilgrims." Evangelist. Then said Evangelist, "How hath it fared with you, my friends, since the time of our last parting? What have you met with, and how have you behaved yourselves?" Then Christian and Faithful told him of all things that had happened to them in the way, and how and with what difficulty, they had arrived to that place. Evangelist. "Right glad am I," said Evangelist, "not that you have met with trials, but that you have been victors, and for that you have, notwithstanding many weaknesses, continued in the way to this very day. I say, right glad am I of this thing, and that for mine own sake and yours. I have sowed, and you have reaped, and the day is coming, when both he that sowed and they that reaped shall rejoice together, that is, if you hold out, for in due season ye shall reap, if ye faint not. The crown is before you, and it is an incorruptible one, so run, that you may obtain it. Some there be that set out for this crown, and, after they have gone far for it, another comes in, and takes it from them. Hold fast, therefore, that you have, let no man take your crown. You are not yet out of the gunshot of the devil, you have not resisted unto blood, striving against sin, let the kingdom be always before you, and believe steadfastly concerning things that are invisible. Let nothing that is on this side the other world get within you, and, above all, look well to your own hearts, and to the lusts thereof, for they are deceitful above all things, and desperately wicked. Set your faces like a flint, you have all power in heaven and earth on your side. Christian. Then Christian thanked him for his exhortation, but told him, withal, that they would have him speak further to them for their help the rest of the way, and the rather, for that they well knew that he was a prophet, and could tell them of things that might happen unto them, and also how they might resist and overcome them. To which request Faithful also consented. So Evangelist began as followeth, Evangelist. My sons, you have heard in the words of the truth of the gospel that you must, through many tribulations, enter into the kingdom of heaven. And again, that in every city bonds and afflictions abide in you, and therefore you cannot expect that you should go long on your pilgrimage without them, in some sort or other. You have found something of the truth of these testimonies upon you already, and more will immediately follow, for now, as you see, you are almost out of this wilderness, and therefore you will soon come into a town that you will by and by see be for you, and in that town you will be hardly beset with enemies, who will strain hard but they will kill you, and be you sure that one or both of you must seal the testimony which you hold, with blood, but be you faithful unto death, and the king will give you a crown of life. He that shall die there, although his death will be unnatural, and his pain perhaps great, he will yet have the better of his fellow, not only because he will be arrived at the celestial city soonest, but because he will escape many miseries that the other will meet with in the rest of his journey. But when you are come to the town, and shall find fulfilled what I have here related, then remember your friend and quit yourselves like men, and commit the keeping of your souls to your God in well-doing, as unto a faithful Creator. Then I saw in my dream, that when they were got out of the wilderness, they presently saw a town before them, and the name of that town is Vanity, and at the town there is a fair kept, called Vanity Fair, it is kept all the year long, it beareth the name of Vanity Fair, because the town where it is kept is lighter than vanity, and also because all that is there sold, or that cometh thither, is vanity. As is the saying of the wise, all that cometh is vanity. This fair is no new erected business, but a thing of ancient standing. I will show you the original of it. Almost 5,000 years agone, there were pilgrims walking to the celestial city as these two honest persons are, and Beelzebub, Apollyon, and Legion, with their companions, perceiving by the path that the pilgrims made, that their way to the city lay through this town of vanity, they contrived here to set up a fair wherein should be sold all sorts of vanity, and that it should last all the year long. Therefore at this fair are all such merchandise sold, as houses, lands, trades, places, honors, preferments, titles, countries, kingdoms, lusts, pleasures, and delights of all sorts, as whores, bawds, wives, husbands, children, masters, servants, lives, blood, bodies, souls, silver, gold, pearls, precious stones, and what not. And, moreover, at this fair there is at all times to be seen juggling, cheats, games, plays, fools, apes, knaves, and rogues, and that of every kind. Here are to be seen too, and that for nothing, thefts, murders, adulteries, false swearers, and that of a blood-red color. And as in other fairs of less moment, there are the several rows and streets, under their proper names, where such and such wares are vended, so here likewise you have the proper places, rows, streets, viz. countries and kingdoms, where the wares of this fair are soonest to be found. Here is the Briton row, the French row, the Italian row, the Spanish row, the German row, where several sorts of vanities are to be sold. But, as in other fairs, some one commodity is as the chief of all the fair. So the ware of Rome and her merchandise is greatly promoted in this fair, only our English nation, with some others, have taken a dislike thereat. Now, as I said, the way to the celestial city lies just through this town where this lusty fair is kept, and he that will go to the city, and yet not go through this town, must needs go out of the world. The Prince of Princes himself, when here, went through this town to his own country, and that upon a fair day too, and as I think, it was Beelzebub, the chief lord of this fair, that invited him to buy of his vanities, would have made him lord of the fair, would he but have done him reverence as he went through the town. Because he was such a person of honor, Beelzebub had him from street to street, and showed him all the kingdoms of the world in a little time, that he might, if possible, allure the blessed one to cheapen and buy some of his vanities, but he had no mind to the merchandise, and therefore left the town, without laying out so much as 1 farthing upon these vanities. This fair, therefore, is an ancient thing, of long standing, and a very great fair. Now these pilgrims, as I said, must needs go through this fair. Well, so they did, but, behold, even as they entered into the fair, all the people in the fair were moved, and the town itself as it were in a hubbub about them, and that for several reasons. For first, the pilgrims were clothed with such kind of raiment as was diverse from the raiment of any that traded in that fair. The people, therefore, of the fair, made a great gazing upon them, some said they were fools, some they were bedlams, and some they are outlandish men. Secondly, and as they wondered at their apparel, so they did likewise at their speech, for few could understand what they said, they naturally spoke the language of Canaan, but they that kept the fair were the men of this world, so that, from one end of the fair to the other, they seemed barbarians each to the other. Thirdly, but that which did not a little amuse the merchandisers was, that these pilgrims set very light by all their wares, they cared not so much as to look upon them, and if they called upon them to buy, they would put their fingers in their ears, and cry, "Turn away mine eyes from beholding vanity, and look upwards," signifying that their trade and traffic was in heaven. One chanced mockingly, beholding the carriage of the men, to say unto them, "What will ye buy?" But they, looking gravely upon him, answered, "We buy the truth." At that there was an occasion taken to despise the men the more, some mocking, some taunting, some speaking reproachfully, and some calling upon others to smite them. At last things came to a hubbub, and great stir in the fair, insomuch that all order was confounded. Now was word presently brought to the great one of the fair, who quickly came down, and deputed some of his most trusty friends to take these men into examination, about whom the fair was almost overturned. So the men were brought to examination, and they that sat upon them, asked them whence they came, whither they went, and what they did there in such an unusual garb. The men told them, that they were pilgrims and strangers in the world, and that they were going to their own country, which was the heavenly Jerusalem, and that they had given no occasion to the men of the town, nor yet to the merchandisers, thus to abuse them, and to let them in their journey, except it was, for that, when one asked them what they would buy, they said they would buy the truth. But they that were appointed to examine them did not believe them to be any other than bedlams and mad, or else such as came to put all things into a confusion in the fair. Therefore they took them and beat them, and besmeared them with dirt, and then put them into the cage, that they might be made a spectacle to all the men of the fair. There, therefore, they lay for some time, and were made the objects of any man's sport, or malice, or revenge, the great one of the fair laughing still at all that befell them. But the men being patient, and not rendering railing for railing, but contrariwise, blessing, and giving good words for bad, and kindness for injuries done, some men in the fair that were more observing, and less prejudiced than the rest, began to check and blame the baser sort for their continual abuses done by them to the men. They, therefore, in angry manner, let fly at them again, counting them as bad as the men in the cage, and telling them that they seemed confederates, and should be made partakers of their misfortunes. The other replied, that for aught they could see, the men were quiet, and sober, and intended nobody any harm, and that there were many that traded in their fair, that were more worthy to be put into the cage, yea, and pillory too, than were the men that they had abused. Thus, after divers words had passed on both sides, the men behaving themselves all the while very wisely and soberly before them, they fell to some blows among themselves, and did harm one to another. Then were these two poor men brought before their examiners again, and they're charged as being guilty of the late hubbub that had been in the fair. So they beat them pitifully, and hanged irons upon them, and led them in chains up and down the fair, for an example and a terror to others, lest any should speak in their behalf, or join themselves unto them. But Christian and faithful behaved themselves yet more wisely, and received the ignominy and shame that was cast upon them, with so much meekness and patience, that it won to their side, though but few in comparison of the rest, several of the men in the fair. This put the other party yet into greater rage, insomuch that they concluded the death of these two men. Wherefore they threatened, that the cage nor irons should serve their turn, but that they should die, for the abuse they had done, and for deluding the men of the fair. Then were they remanded to the cage again, until further order should be taken with them. So they put them in, and made their feet fast in the stocks. Here, therefore, they called again to mind what they had heard from their faithful friend Evangelist, and were the more confirmed in their way and sufferings, by what he told them would happen to them. They also now comforted each other, that whose lot it was to suffer, even he should have the best of it, therefore each man secretly wished that he might have that preferment, but committing themselves to the all-wise disposal of him that ruleth all things, with much content they abode in the condition in which they were, until they should be otherwise disposed of. Then a convenient time being appointed, they brought them forth to their trial, in order to their condemnation. When the time was come, they were brought before their enemies and arraigned. The judge's name was Lord Hategood. Their indictment was one and the same in substance, though somewhat varying in form, the contents whereof were this: that they were enemies to, and disturbers of their trade, that they had made commotions and divisions in the town, and had won a party to their own most dangerous opinions, in contempt of the law of their prince. Then Faithful began to answer, that he had only set himself against that which had set itself against him that is higher than the highest. And, said he, as for disturbance, I make none, being myself a man of peace. The parties that were won to us, were won by beholding our truth and innocence, and they are only turned from the worse to the better. And as to the king you talk of, since B is Beelzebub, the enemy of our Lord, I defy him and all his angels. Then proclamation was made, that they that had aught to say for their lord the king against the prisoner at the bar, should forthwith appear and give in their evidence. So there came in 3 witnesses, to wit, Envy, Superstition, and Pickthank. They were then asked if they knew the prisoner at the bar, and what they had to say for their lord the king against him. Then stood forth Envy, and said to this effect, My lord, I have known this man a long time, and will attest upon my oath before this honorable bench, that he is judge. Hold. Give him his oath. So they swear him. Then he said, Envy. My lord, this man, notwithstanding his plausible name, is one of the vilest men in our country. He neither regardeth prince nor people, law nor custom, but doth all that he can to possess all men with certain of his disloyal notions, which he in the general calls principles of faith and holiness. And, in particular, I heard him once myself affirm, that Christianity and the customs of our town of Vanity, were diametrically opposite, and could not be reconciled. By which saying, my lord, he doth at once not only condemn all our laudable doings, but us in the doing of them. Judge. Then did the judge say to him, Hast thou any more to say? Envy. My lord, I could say much more, only I would not be tedious to the court. Yet, if need be, when the other gentlemen have given in their evidence, rather than anything shall be wanting that will dispatch him, I will enlarge my testimony against him. So he was bid stand by. Then they called Superstition, and bid him look upon the prisoner. They also asked, what he could say for their lord the king against him. Then they swear him, so he began. Super. My lord, I have no great acquaintance with this man, nor do I desire to have further knowledge of him, however, this I know, that he is a very pestilent fellow, from some discourse that, the other day, I had with him in this town, for then talking with him, I heard him say, that our religion was not, and such by which a man could by no means please God. Which sayings of his, my lord, your lordship very well knows, what necessarily thence will follow, to wit, that we do still worship in vain, are yet in our sins, and finally shall be damned, and this is that which I have to say. Then was Pickthank sworn, and bid say what he knew, in behalf of their lord the king, against the prisoner at the bar. Pickthank. My lord, and you gentlemen all, this fellow I have known of a long time, and have heard him speak things that ought not to be spoke, for he hath railed on our noble prince Beelzebub, and hath spoken contemptibly of his honorable friends, whose names are the Lord Old Man, the Lord Carnal Delight, the Lord Luxurious, the Lord Desire of Vain Glory, my old Lord Lechery, Sir Having Greedy, with all the rest of our nobility. And he hath said, moreover, that if all men were of his mind, if possible, there is not one of these noblemen should have any longer a being in this town. Besides, he hath not been afraid to rail on you, my lord, who are now appointed to be his judge, calling you an ungodly villain, with many other such like vilifying terms, with which he hath bespattered most of the gentry of our town. When this Pickthank had told his tale, the judge directed his speech to the prisoner at the bar, saying, Thou runagate, heretic, and traitor, hast thou heard what these honest gentlemen have witnessed against thee? Faithful. May I speak a few words in my own defense? Judge. Sirrah. Sirrah. Thou deservest to live no longer, but to be slain immediately upon the place, yet, that all men may see our gentleness towards thee, let us hear what thou, vile runagate, hast to say. Faithful. 1. I say, then, in answer to what Mr. Envy hath spoken, I never said aught but this, that what rule, or laws, or custom, or people, were flat against the word of God, are diametrically opposite to Christianity. If I have said amiss in this, convince me of my error, and I am ready here before you to make my recantation. 2. As to the second, to wit, Mr. Superstition, and his charge against me, I said only this, that in the worship of God there is required a divine faith, but there can be no divine faith without a divine revelation of the will of God. Therefore, whatever is thrust into the worship of God that is not agreeable to divine revelation, cannot be done but by a human faith, which faith will not be profitable to eternal life. 3. As to what Mr. Pickthank hath said, I say, avoiding terms, as that I am said to rail, and the like, that the prince of this town, with all the rabblement, his attendants, by this gentleman named, are more fit for a being in hell, than in this town and country, and so, the Lord have mercy upon me. Then the judge called to the jury, who all this while stood by, to hear and observe, Gentlemen of the jury, you see this man about whom so great an uproar hath been made in this town. You have also heard what these worthy gentlemen have witnessed against him. Also you have heard his reply and confession. It lieth now in your breasts to hang him, or save his life, but yet I think meet to instruct you into our law. There was an act made in the days of Pharaoh the Great, servant to our prince, that lest those of a contrary religion should multiply, and grow too strong for him, their males should be thrown into the river. There was also an act made in the days of Nebuchadnezzar the Great, another of his servants, that whosoever would not fall down and worship his golden image, should be thrown into a fiery furnace. There was also an act made in the days of Darius, that whoso, for some time, called upon any god but him, should be cast into the lion's den. Now the substance of these laws this rebel has broken, not only in thought, which is not to be borne, but also in word and deed, which must therefore needs be intolerable. For that of Pharaoh, his law was made upon a supposition, to prevent mischief, no crime being yet apparent, but here is a crime apparent. For the second and third, you see he disputeth against our religion, and for the treason he hath confessed, he deserveth to die the death. Then went the jury out, whose names were, Mr. Blindman, Mr. No Good, Mr. Malice, Mr. Lovelust, Mr. Live Loose, Mr. Heady, Mr. High Mind, Mr. Enmity, Mr. Liar, Mr. Cruelty, Mr. Hatelight, and Mr. Implacable, who every one gave in his private verdict against him among themselves, and afterwards unanimously concluded to bring him in guilty before the judge. And first, among themselves, Mr. Blind Man, the foreman, said, I see clearly that this man is a heretic. Then said Mr. No Good, away with such a fellow from the earth. I, said Mr. Malice, for I hate the very looks of him. Then said Mr. Lovelust, I could never endure him. Nor I, said Mr. Live Loose, for he would always be condemning my way. Hang him, said Mr. Heady. A sorry scrub, said Mr. High Mind. My heart riseth against him, said Mr. Enmity. He is a rogue, said Mr. Liar. Hanging is too good for him, said Mr. Cruelty. Let us dispatch him out of the way, said Mr. Hatelight. Then said Mr. Implacable, might I have all the world given me, I could not be reconciled to him, therefore, let us forthwith bring him in guilty of death. And so they did, therefore he was presently condemned, to be had from the place where he was, to the place from whence he came, and there to be put to the most cruel death that could be invented. They, therefore, brought him out, to do with him according to their law, and, first, they scourged him, then they buffeted him, then they lanced his flesh with knives, after that, they stoned him with stones, then pricked him with their swords, and, last of all, they burned him to ashes at the stake. Thus came Faithful to his end. Now I saw that there stood behind the multitude, a chariot and a couple of horses, waiting for Faithful, who, so soon as his adversaries had dispatched him, was taken up into it, and straightway was carried up through the clouds, with sound of trumpet, the nearest way to the celestial gate. But as for Christian, he had some respite, and was remanded back to prison. So he there remained for a space, but he that overrules all things, having the power of their rage in his own hand, so wrought it about, that Christian for that time escaped them, and went his way, and as he went, he sang, saying, Well, Faithful, thou hast faithfully professed unto thy Lord, with whom thou shalt be blessed, when faithless ones, with all their vain delights, are crying out under their hellish plights, Sing, Faithful, sing, and let thy name survive, for, though they killed thee, thou art yet alive.